Everybody, and welcome to the City Commission meeting this October 18th, 2022. Thank you for being here tonight. For those of you who are here for the first time, welcome, and we appreciate your coming to participate in the democracy that we practice here in Fort Lauderdale. Just to let you know a little bit about the format, we begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we do a roll call, and then we have an opportunity to do presentations, and presentations are usually the commission's recognizing individuals or causes or organizations that are important to us and important to the community, and usually relevant for this time of year. So if I could begin, I could ask you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Mr. Clerk, you want to call the roll?
Commissioner Moritas?
Here.
Commissioner Glassman?
Here.
Commissioner McKenzie? Not present. Vice Mayor Sorensen?
Here.
Mayor Trentalis?
Yes, and we have a quorum tonight. A couple changes on the agenda. CP5, Exhibit 1 solicitation for Cigna Medical Plan was added. It was not available at the time of publishing. Same with Exhibit CP6, Exhibit 1. Again, the solicitation for Cigna Dental Plan was added but not available at the time of publishing. With regard to the minutes in the agenda, do I have a motion to approve them?
Moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Commissioner McKenzie's not present. Vice Mayor Sorensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas?
Yes.
Commissioner Glassman?
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis?
Yes, and the minutes in tonight's agenda are now approved. So our first presentation, I invite our Vice Mayor, who's going to present a proclamation regarding Breast Cancer Awareness Month. You'll notice we're all wearing some type of pink to acknowledge our recognition of breast cancer awareness. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. All right, David?
Check. There we are. Thank you, Mayor. So if Angelique Mercer, the Senior Development Manager at American Cancer Society, and Paula Levinson, Director of Marketing at AutoNation, would join me up here, please. Thank you for coming on up. And while they're coming up, Mayor, just want to celebrate our Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And so I've got a proclamation for both of you, which I'll present, but want to read what we're celebrating here. This is in recognition of Breast Cancer Awareness Month 2022, whereas in 1985, the American Cancer Society designated October as Breast Cancer Awareness Month to fill an informational void and empower women to take an active role in their breast health. And whereas in October, also known as Pinktober, is a time when people and communities across the world unite to raise awareness about breast cancer. And whereas 1 in 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer in their lifetime, and whereas many of us are personally touched by this disease, knowing someone affected by breast cancer, a wife, a mother, a family member, a friend, I know I am, their stories, hardships, and determination inspire us in our fight to eradicate this disease. And whereas the city takes proactive measures to make early detection accessible to its employees by offering screenings, and whereas the city is proud to be home with and partnering with our community partner AutoNation and its Drive Pink mission, which has raised nearly $35 million for breast cancer research and treatment since 2013. On October 11th, AutoNation hosted its annual Drive Pink Across America Day and delivered totes for hopes to patients undergoing cancer treatments. And whereas American Cancer Society has also made significant impact towards ending breast cancer through its Making Strides Against Breast Cancer movement that has united communities in the fight against this deadly disease and funded research, continuous support for cancer patients, and access to life-saving screenings. And whereas the city of Fort Lauderdale thanks its neighbors, community partners for their steadfast commitment, now therefore we as city commissioners of the city of Fort Lauderdale hereby proclaim October 2022 as Breast Cancer Awareness Month, dated this 18th day of October 2022, signed your mayor, Dean J. Trentalis.
Yes.
That was a mouthful. A lot there. Exactly. So why don't you come up first, Angelique, if you don't mind. I'll hold the proclamation and turn the mic over to you to say a few words.
Thank you very much. As you heard, my name is Angelique. I've been with American Cancer Society since 2019 as a volunteer, and as of 2 months ago as an employee. I'm very happy to be here. It's my dream job, and I'm very proud to represent American Cancer Society here at the City of Fort Lauderdale meeting. As you guys may know, our event, October 22nd, is Making Strides Against Breast Cancer of Broward. We're actually hosting it here in Fort Lauderdale at Huizinga Plaza. It's a very fun event. We have multiple sponsors, AutoNation included, and it's a fun event, but as we all know, it's more than an event. It is a movement to end breast cancer as we know it. So everybody here, women, men, encourage your moms, your aunts, your sisters, your daughters to get your mammograms. My aunt is here today from a regular mammogram checkup. And they found a lump, and thankfully she's here because of early screening and prevention, which is what you guys are helping us do by fundraising. We are volunteer-led and staff-supported, and we appreciate all that you guys do, and thank you very much. I'm glad to accept this proclamation.
Hello, I'm Paula Levinson from AutoNation. Incredibly proud to be here to support AutoNation and represent them. The one thing I do want to say is AutoNation does not just drive pink in October. We drive pink all year long because cancer patients are diagnosed and are fighting cancer all year long. So thank you very much, and thank you to the Vice Mayor and to the Commission for the lovely proclamation. It's much appreciated. Good night.
We appreciate your being here tonight. You're very welcome. Thank you. Next, I'd like to invite Commissioner Moritas, who will be presenting a proclamation regarding the Area Agency on Aging. Commissioner Moritas.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. And may I please have up the front the whole council? Thank you. Thank you. That's why I say the senior staff from the whole council, not everybody. All right, thank you for joining me. So on behalf of the City of Fort Lauderdale, I'd like to read this proclamation from the Office of the Mayor of the City of Fort Lauderdale in recognition of the Area Agency on Aging of Broward County Caregiver Empowerment Day. Whereas there are approximately 15 million individuals who serve as unpaid caregivers for family members with Alzheimer's disease or related dementia. Whereas according to the Alzheimer's Association, there are approximately 580,000 people aged 65 and older living with Alzheimer's in the state of Florida, and 6.5 million people living with Alzheimer's nationwide. The number of new and existing cases of Alzheimer's in people aged 65 and older is projected to increase by 12 million by 2050. And whereas individuals in the late stages of Alzheimer's or dementia frequently require continuous care for essential life functions such as feeding, bathing, and dressing, the difficult demands placed on caregivers may eventually erode their focus on properly caring for themselves. And whereas without proper support, caregivers may become susceptible to developing their own serious health issues, including depression and anxiety. The negative effects of the stress associated with being a caregiver can further exacerbate behavioral and psychological challenges for the person suffering from Alzheimer's or dementia. Whereas the Area Agency on Aging of Broward County is the prime advocate for Broward County residents who are 60 years of age or older, they aim to allow those to continue living to their fullest potential through planning, developing, coordinating, evaluating, and funding programs and services that improve the quality of life for all Broward County seniors. And whereas AAABC hosted the Empowering Caregivers Conference at the Parker today to advance their goal of bringing the community together, this free event provided a forum for meaningful conversations relevant to those with Alzheimer's and dementia-related diseases, their caretakers, professionals, working with these patients on topics such as recent advances in care, fraud prevention, and community-specific resources, whereas the City of Fort Lauderdale recognizes and honors the invaluable contributions that caregivers for individuals with Alzheimer's and dementia have made, not only to their loved ones, but to our city and our nation. We thank the dedicated family members who selflessly care for their loved ones and encourage them to make a commitment to proper self-care. Now, therefore, we as the City Commissioners of the City of Fort Lauderdale do hereby proclaim this day as Area Agency on Aging of Broward County Caregiver Empowerment Day in the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Signed, your Mayor, Dean J. Transellis. So, thank you. And Charlotte, I'd like to introduce Charlotte, the Chief Executive Officer, to say a few words about the agency.
Thank you. Thank you. I would like to introduce our team here because it takes a team effort to get everything done. Gloria?
Hi. Hello. Good evening. My name is Gloria Yan, and I'm the SHINE representative that assists Medicare beneficiaries by providing them with unbiased counseling on healthcare, Medicare.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Ramona Woods. I'm the Human Resources Director.
Good evening. My name is Barbara Epps. I'm the Director of Aging Programs and Community Outreach.
Good evening. My name is Vivian Perecci, and I'm the Caregiver Navigator. I provide extra support for our caregivers as they access services through the agency.
Good evening. I'm Crizia Blanco, and I'm the Health and Wellness Coordinator. I provide health and wellness classes.
I wanted you to meet the team because we're all here to help all of you if you need services from us. Our empowerment conference we had today was our inaugural conference, and we plan to do it again next year. We want to make everyone aware who is a caregiver that we are here to help you. And the proclamation said everything, but anyone who knows a caregiver personally or who is a caregiver, you know that you put your heart and soul to caring for your loved one, and it can be exhausting, and you're not alone. And that's the main thing I want to say is please look us up, reach out to us, because we want to help you. We want to make your life easier, and basically we're here. Don't forget about us. We're here for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you so much.
Do it. Wrap it up strong.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now I'd like to invite Commissioner Stephen Glassman to present a proclamation regarding Diwali Festival of Lights Day.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. You know, in my family, Festival of Lights, we call that Hanukkah, but that's okay. But tonight we're going to call it Diwali, and I am very thrilled and honored to call up and join me at the podium Ramola Matwani, Dilip Nershian, and Raj Verma. And I hope I pronounced everything correctly.
You did great.
Good. This is from the Office of the Mayor, City of Fort Lauderdale, proclamation in recognition of Diwali Festival of Lights 2022. Whereas Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and the nation have been influenced by the extraordinary cultural, ethnic, linguistic, and religious diversity of its residents. And where Hinduism is the third largest religion in the world with more than 1 billion followers worldwide, representing 15% of the global population, and approximately 4 million Hindu Americans live across the nation. And Broward County is home to a significant Hindu American population representing diverse ethnic backgrounds. And whereas the Hindu American Foundation and over 1 billion celebrants worldwide reverently observe the festival of Diwali, Festival of Lights, symbolizing the victory of Dharma and good over evil. Diwali is one of the most celebrated festivals of great significance to Hindus, Sikhs, Jains, and Buddhists. And whereas Diwali is a festival during which celebrants light small oil lamps known as diyas, place them around their home, and pray for knowledge, peace, and universal well-being. The shared Indian holiday of Diwali signifies a special time of peace and serenity, with hope of building bridges of understanding and tearing down barriers of intolerance. And whereas Fort Lauderdale and our nation have greatly benefited from Hindu-American contributions, especially through Dharmic philosophy, Ayurvedic medicine, classic Indian art, dance, music, meditation, yoga, literature, and community service. And whereas ahimsa, is that pronounced ahimsa? Ahimsa. Thank you. Non-injury or non-violence, a central principle for Hinduism, provides the ethical foundation for vegetarianism, environmentalism, and harmonious living. World-renowned Mahatma Gandhi employed nonviolent resistance to lead the successful campaign for India's independence from British rule, and to later inspire movements for civil rights and freedom across the world. And whereas Hindu Americans promote the ideals of tolerance, pluralism, and religious freedom, which are inherent to their beliefs and respect for the diversity of all faiths. And whereas sharing the entrepreneur spirit of America, Hindu Americans have also contributed to many of Broward County's economic sectors and have particularly excelled in the areas of education, business, law, politics, information technology, medicine, and science, thereby contributing to Broward County's economic vitality, growth, and well-being. And whereas we recognize the religious and historical significance of Diwali and its message of tolerance, compassion, and the victory of good over evil, which resonates with the American spirit. Now, therefore, we, as City Commissioners of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, do hereby proclaim October 24th, 2022 as Diwali, Festival of Lights Day in the City of Fort Lauderdale, dated this, the 18th day of October 2022, and signed by our Mayor, the Honorable Dean J. Trentalis. Ramola.
Thank you, Commissioner Glassman. Thank you, Mayor, and all the commissioners. Thank you so much for this recognition. I also would like to thank and show our gratitude on the entire Indian community that lives here, to the Parks and Recreation for recognizing this, and also a big celebration that we have on Oceanside Park, October 21st from 6 to 9. Each one of you, everyone here is invited. Diwali is all about darkness, light over darkness, and also it's a holiday to celebrate with all the communities and embrace our diversity. So please come in big numbers. There will be Bollywood dances, there are vendors, there's a lot going on that evening, good music and good food. So let's celebrate together, and again, on entire community. Mayor, Commissioners, thank you very much, and all of you for being here. Anyone would like to say that? Please.
Say a few words. We're going to take a photo after. Go ahead.
Not too long. Just say a few words, not that big.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the Commission, staff, and our esteemed residents. I'm just going to say, in 2004, the Florida House of Representatives passed Hindu Heritage Month Resolution 9007C, describing Hinduism as representing one of the most ancient cultures promoting spirituality, nonviolence, tolerance, world peace, international fraternity, and strong family values. As a quick one-liner intro, Hinduism has no single founder, unlike other faiths. It evolved over thousands of years and is a fusion of various beliefs which seek oneness in divinity in many forms, taking shape as various deities, often misrepresented as gods of polytheism. We have 4 faiths sprouting from the same root of Hinduism and have seen a recent spike in ethnic attacks as reported by FBI. We are still trying to decipher what is going on as these attacks become widespread by the day. And we are going to just request our law enforcement people to just keep an extra eye on some of the events. And we thank you all for giving us the great opportunity of the proclamation. Thank you so much.
Get a photo. Thank you. See you Friday. Yes. Our good friend. All right, thank you. That concludes our presentations tonight. I want to thank everyone for being here who have stayed here for the presentations. Now we have an opportunity to go right into our agenda. And at this point, I will ask any member of the commission if there are items within the consent agenda aspect of our meeting that they would like to pull, so that we can discuss them separately. Otherwise, if they're not pulled, they'll all be voted on together. I see that somebody has signed up for CM3, Mr. Rosen, but if it's not been pulled, you're welcome to speak, but it will be probably approved, and I see you support it. So where's Mr. Rosen? Well, there's no point in speaking if it's already been passed. But if you want to speak, you're welcome to speak. We'll have to pull the item and we'll vote on it separately. Is that what you want? Okay. Commissioner Moritas.
No, thank you.
Commissioner Glassman
No.
and Vice Mayor.
None other than CM3. Thanks.
Other than CM3?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
So CM3 has been pulled. And other than CM3, do I hear a motion to approve all the items of the consent agenda?
Moved.
Do I hear a second?
Vice Mayor Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes.
Commissioner Glassman,
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis.
Yes, and so all the consent agenda items are now approved except for CM3 and Commissioner and Vice Mayor.
Thanks. Just, Eric, if you want to come up and share whatever you'd like. Thanks.
All right, good evening, Your Honors, this Honorable Commission, Mayor, and Vice Mayor, and all the distinguished members of the community that have visited us. We're here on a motion to approve a settlement on a case involving an officer that was involved in a crash with my client. And we're here in support of it. My client has requested that this case get resolved. Your Honors have reviewed the facts of the case, and I would ask that the commission at least look into it further with the city of Fort Lauderdale.
Counsel,
Yes.
they are represented.
Yeah.
Have you consulted with me before consulting with my client?
I'm sorry, say it again?
Have you consulted with me or asked my permission to speak to my client? This has not been settled yet. It's up for a vote.
Okay.
And you're going to come talk to my client about the settlement? That's
No,
extremely improper.
I'm not discussing the settlement. I'm already asking for approval. I think everyone knows what the facts are of the case. I'm simply asking that it just be looked into a little bit further within the department, and that's all. That's it. And if you want to discuss it privately, that's fine
Mr.
too.
Boileau, what are we looking into? I thought this is.
We're not looking into anything. It's highly improper. We can discuss it.
Do we want to pull the item and it's not settled?
No, I'm not going to stop the settlement,
Do you
but
want
it's
us
just
to pull
extremely
the item
improper.
and not?
No, I'm asking this commission to approve the settlement, and Your Honor, this commission has reviewed the facts.
Well, what is this thing you said you want us, there's further facts that you want us to
There's
investigate?
no additional facts. You have all the information.
Okay.
And I was just asking that the department on this one issue be
don't-
looked into. And I'm not going to disclose anything, but I will.
No,
I'll reach out
but
to the city
don't
attorney.
pull victory from the jaws of defeat here. I mean,
Yeah, I could change my
you got
recommendation.
it. Move on.
Council,
All right.
you want me to change my recommendation?
If you want a trial, then that would be
Well,
up to you. But
No, no.
I mean, this
Vice
is
Mayor,
ridiculous.
we're not going there. Okay.
You want to move the item, Mr. Vice Mayor?
Moved.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay.
Vice Mayor Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes.
Commissioner Glassman,
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis.
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honors.
You're welcome. Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next item, we've gone through all the consent agenda items, moving to motion, City Attorney Annual Performance Review. You all received the backup memo from Mr. Boileau, and let me just begin the discussion. I have to say that I truly appreciate all the work that and the advice that you've given to this commission, and you have been extremely responsive in all of our challenges that we've had over the last several years, not just this past year. I would certainly recommend an increase in your salary, but before we do anything like that, I just want to hear from every member of the commission if they have anything they'd like to add to the discussion. Commissioner Moritas.
Yes, when you say increase, what are you thinking?
Well, I think it's usually it's a 3%. Help me out, Commissioner Glassman. It's 3% merit and 3%.
You know everything.
What's that?
Let's ask the city manager. I said, how does?
No, but
Yeah.
I need someone to refresh.
Well,
my
that
memory.
is the merit increase would be 3%, I believe, if
Typically, it's 3%.
right. But I believe we can also set a different salary level
Yes.
if we feel like it may be needed.
Right.
So when I was thinking about his salary, I was actually looking at it also in comparison to the city
Well,
auditor.
Okay, go ahead.
And we're going to discuss that later on. And I don't think maybe a starting salary of a new employee and then
So what are you recommending?
probably between,
What is your base salary now?
Currently, it's 243.
243. Okay.
believe that might be kind of about the same level where we're starting our city auditor.
Well, honestly, I personally think that, number one, we should be looking at Mr. Boileau's salary independent of whatever anybody else makes. We can make that decision with regard to the auditor when that item comes up. And number two, I also think we have to look at the total compensation package. It's not
Right,
just
well-
base salary, it's everything.
I think their packages are probably similar. I just think your base salary, once we set that, then you can only increase a certain amount year after year. So I would probably recommend that we reset Alan to probably closer to 255.
255?
I think so. I think we need to reset his base.
I'm fine with that.
I think it's also important to look at around the county. I mean, we are the largest city. I would imagine we are the busiest city. I also wanted to thank Alan and his entire department for the work this year. When I read through the report, it really is astounding. We are no longer a small little city. And the work that's in front of staff, especially departments like the attorney's office, it's quite impressive, the work that gets done in a year. So I would agree with Commissioner Moritas that I think we have to look at it in its totality. I was really surprised to see some of the cities in the county where they actually pay their city attorney more than we do. So, Alan, where would you think the city falls within the entire range of all the cities in Broward County in terms of salaries for city attorneys?
Well, we looked a little bit at that last week. I know that, some are higher, some are lower. Again, depending, it's hard to gauge from a population standpoint because we're a lot busier and we're the county seat. I know that Coral Springs is at 288, but again, candidly, I don't know how long the attorney's been there. The Miami Beach, we're not going to talk about Miami Beach because that's way too high. Pompano Beach is at 257. I know my good friend over there has been there since 2014. So it's a little hard to evaluate depending on tenure and so on. But just based on, I've spoken to you about my philosophy that with charter officers, city manager should always make more money than any charter officer because he has the responsibility of the city. He operates the city, has a lot of employees. But commensurate with what others are making, and I think 255, 260 would be fair, but again, I leave that to your discretion.
And Mayor, we haven't gotten, I forgot, City Clerk, what agenda item is the city auditor's contract?
It's down.
It's
R9.
R9?
R9.
Because I don't know what, Mayor, I would imagine that you've been dealing with that issue, so I don't know what the recommendation is going to be, but I almost would like to know, because then I think I would know exactly where I would fall with the city attorney.
Well, I think we should compare city attorneys with city attorneys, not city attorneys with other charter officers.
Well, I think for sure our city attorney should be paid the same as the city attorney of the Pompano Beach. I mean, I just think that the work.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
I'm just saying we should compare city attorneys, with city attorneys. Why don't we compare city attorneys with the clerk? I mean, he's a charter officer too, which we don't do that. We compare clerks with clerks.
I understand.
Commissioner
You want to
Glassman,
raise the 250,000?
I agree with you.
David wants that.
I think, like you, Commissioner, and Commissioner Moritas, I think Alan's done an excellent job, responsiveness, and also the partnership between the city attorney and the city manager, I think has been excellent throughout our time as a commission. Responsiveness and engagement, I think, is very good. If you are open to it, I'd say $260,000, I think is
I was just going to say, that's what Pompano Beach is, isn't it?
Pompano's a little under that, I think.
257, yeah.
So
260?
I'm fine with
260,000.
that number.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
I hear 280. Do I hear 280?
No. I think that's very fair.
Once, going twice?
No, that's Lamar Fisher is the auctioneer, and he's
Right, yeah. Where is he when we need
don't
him?
step on his toes.
my lane here. I'm out
And
of
he's
my lane.
ironically from Pompano Beach, so
There
that's
you go.
perfect.
Are we allowed to bring up anything else about a different charter officer during this conversation? We have to stick to this agenda item, if I have a thought.
Wait, say it again?
Can I bring up another item, but related to the city manager as opposed to Alan, or do I have to stay on topic?
I think we need to stay on topic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe
But you could,
at the end of the meeting,
yeah. Oh, of course. Yeah.
or sometime.
Okay.
So is that a motion?
So I'd move,
Yep.
Mayor, if you're open to it,
260?
to $260,000
It's 260 plus all the other benefits.
plus the
Correct.
benefits, but the 260 in lieu of the 3%,
Yeah, that's total compensation,
Correct.
total base salary.
total base salary, $260,000 for this upcoming year.
All right, do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, so moved and seconded. Any other discussion? None? Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes.
Commissioner Glassman,
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis.
Yes, and so that item is approved.
If I may, thank you very much. As I stated in my report, I remain very privileged and honored to be your city attorney. And I have to thank my staff, incredible group of attorneys, paralegals, and assistants that make our office flow. And that's the only way we can deliver the product we deliver. So kudos to them.
Thank you. You have a great staff, and not just attorney staff, but support staff. Everybody's been really, really great and responsive. I have to say, it makes the wheels of this government, move more quickly, and that's very helpful. Moving on to R1, we have appointment of board and committee members. Want to read the names into the record?
Yes. For November 1st, for Citizens Committee Recognition, Michael Albetta, nominated by Commissioner Glassman. And for tonight, Audit Advisory Board, David Brown, nominated by Commissioner Glassman. Central City Redevelopment Advisory Board, Scott Scheckman, nominated by Commissioner Glassman. Linda Fleischman, nominated by Commissioner Glassman. And Education Advisory Board, Yolanda Francis, nominated by Commissioner McKenzie, and that rounds it out.
Any additions or modifications? There being none, someone like to introduce the resolution?
Introduced.
A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, appointing or nominating, if applicable, board and committee members as set forth in the exhibit attached here to and made a part thereof. Vice Mayor Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes.
Commissioner Glassman,
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis.
Yes, those appointments are now made and approved by the commission. I want to thank all those folks that have volunteered to participate in those boards or committees. Thank you for your commitment and sacrifice to our city. R2, this is a quasi-judicial resolution vacating a 5-foot wide public purpose easement north of West Sunrise Boulevard, east of Northwest 23rd Avenue, and south of Northwest 11th Street, and west of Interstate 95. Anyone wishing to speak must be sworn in, and the commission will announce any site visits, communications, or expert opinions received and make them a part of the record. Commissioner Moritas, do you have any disclosures?
None.
I have none. Commissioner Glassman?
None.
Vice Mayor?
None.
I have none. No one has signed up to speak. Will someone please move to close public hearing?
Moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Sorensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas?
Yes.
Commissioner Glassman?
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis?
And that, so a public hearing is now closed.
Introduced.
Yeah, but hold on a second. I did not get these. These people signed up to speak.
After you had already passed.
Oh, okay, all right. Thank you. It's been introduced. Any questions regarding the resolution? There being none, please call the roll.
A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, vacating that certain 5-foot right-of-way utilities and other public purposes easement described in Official Records Book 8085, page 174 of the Public Records of Broward County, Florida, being the west 5 feet of the east 1/4 of the east 1/2 of the south, 1/2 of the south, 1/2 of the south, 1/2 of the southeast 1/4 of Section 32, Township 49, Range 42 East, less the south 200 feet and less the west 35 feet thereof, located west of Interstate 95, north of West Sunrise Boulevard, east of Northwest 23rd Avenue, and south of Panther Lane, all said lands being the City of Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, Florida. Vice Mayor
David,
Sword,
was that 1/2 of the South?
times three.
Okay, Thank you.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas, Commissioner Glassman,
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis.
Yes, and that resolution is now approved. R3 is another quasi-judicial resolution approving plat known as public storage at Northwest 23rd Avenue, located at 1020 Northwest 23rd Avenue, public storage properties. Anyone wishing to speak must be sworn in, and the commission will announce any site visits, communications, or expert opinions received and make them a part of the record. I have one person sign up to speak. Hope, are you here? Is Hope Calhoun here? Oh, there you are, just for questions, right? Okay. Do you have any disclosures, Commissioner Moritas?
No.
I think I do. I think I met with you regarding this way back. This is an old item, right? Yeah, okay. Any disclosures, Commissioner Glassman?
None.
Commissioner, Vice Mayor?
None.
Okay. So, no one else has signed up to speak. Want to move to close public hearing?
Moved.
Do I hear a second? Moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes.
Commissioner Glassman,
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis.
Yes, public hearing is now closed on R3. Would someone like to introduce the resolution?
Introduced.
And that's for approval.
Yes.
A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, approving a plat entitled Public Storage at Northwest 23rd Avenue and providing for an effective date. Vice Mayor Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes.
Commissioner Glassman,
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis.
Yes, and the item is now approved. Moving on to R4. Okay, this is a quasi-judicial resolution approving a site plan level 2 development permit and alternative design deviation, BLF 2021 LLC, and Station Village Development LLC. Anyone wishing to speak must be sworn in, and the commission will announce any site visits, communications, or expert opinions received and make them a part of the record. I have a couple people who signed up to speak. Hope, did you sign up to speak on this one? Because I have you down here for this, so. Okay, good night. We have Robert Lockery signed up to speak for questions only, and John Baston. Is John here? Would you like to speak? Step right up. Come up to the podium. I see you love Fort Lauderdale, so you must be sworn in.
Good evening, Mayor and the Commissioners. Thank you for listening to me. I'm from City View Townhouses. That's where I live. We're catty corner from the Station Village. And I just have two quick questions. First of all, I would like to welcome Station Village to the west side of the tracks. It's about time somebody came over and started developing over there. And in reading their advertisements, I see there'll be 400 units plus retail and 550 parking spaces. Being as we have a large swale around our 130 townhouses, I'm wondering where the other 150 cars will park. And the other question I have, which is probably for the city, is 2nd Street was repaved in the last couple years from Northwest 7th Avenue to Northwest 4th Avenue. And being a downtown resident, I notice when all these big buildings go up, the street looks awful, is pitted. Will the street be repaved afterwards?
Well, we'll have to deal with that when the time comes, but needless to say, if anything is built there, the street would be restored to its original condition.
Is that from the city or the developer?
If the developer destroys property, the developer would be responsible for taking care of that. Yeah.
And the other question I have for the developers is just the concern over the short number of parking spaces.
We can ask the developer's attorney to respond to that.
Okay.
He's here tonight.
All right.
All right?
That's it.
Okay, great, thank you. Mr. Lockery, can you come up? So, to start this discussion, keep in mind that this is in the transition zone. And my big concern about a building of this size is that it exceeds the transition zone height limit significantly. According to our staff, Mr. Christopher Cooper, who's the director of our Development Services Department, he sent me an email indicating that the height limit, if I read this correctly, is 87.5 feet. And this building is supposed to be 394 feet, which violates our transition zone ordinance, which this commission passed within the last couple of years because of its proximity to the neighborhood. If you look on Exhibit 3, page 7, you'll see a computer-generated image of what this building is going to look like compared to the neighborhood across the street, which is a single-family home townhouse development, which personally I think violates significantly our transition zone ordinance. So, but before we get to that, I guess we should ask Mr. Lockery with regard to the parking. How many parking spaces are going to be in this building?
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. Robert Lockery on behalf of the applicant. Yeah, the project actually exceeds your city zoning parking requirements. There's 556 on site. And what is also important to recognize, and I think it kind of goes along with what the gentleman was saying, this will be the first project west of the tracks and north of Broward, right in conjunction with the Bright Line. So we do believe a lot of folks will be living here, will hopefully be using Bright Line as well as mass transit. And it is parked at a rate that you typically see in the downtown area.
So there's more than one parking space per unit, correct?
That's correct.
All right, but how do you justify the fact that it is 394 feet tall in a zoning district which only permits a height limit of 87 feet?
Well, it's not actually the zoning district that limits you to that height. This is in the downtown core, which actually doesn't have a height limit. But as you correctly state, there is a transition zone on the northern limits whenever you have a downtown RAC adjoining, for example, as you described, a single-family neighborhood, et cetera. A couple things that are unique about this, and those are the reasons we are asking for the alternative design standard. First and importantly, across the street to the north, that area also has a land use category of regional activity center. And over time, we expect that you will see a more intense zoning district as contrasted with other transitional zones, for example, on the east side of Flagler Village adjacent to Victoria Park, further south, Rio Vista, Tarpon River to the southwest, and even Sailboat Bend a little bit further to the south, where you have traditional residential zoning districts. Here, although it is a zoning district, the underlying land use is Regional Activity Center across the street. The use itself across the street is a church, not that that is significant, but I think even more important is the alternative design that's been proposed, and that's been working with your staff. They've been beating us up quite a bit, which is why it has taken us over a year to get in front of you. But I think what's important to note is the building has been stepped back much more significantly than it would if it were to meet all your standards. For example, as it fronts 2nd Street, a traditional building would be located 35 feet from the center line. In this case, the building's been pulled back 50 feet. And most recently, as we were going through this process, the tower itself has been stepped back an additional 20 feet, so 70 feet from the tower, from the center line, where the downtown core would have the building going straight up. In addition to that, on either side of the tower, and I can show you the diagrams, but I know you have some of them before you, although the pictures are pretty good. One of the things you would see, for example, if you were to flip this whole project around and put the tower on the south side of the property, is you would then have the wider and larger garage right up against the residential neighborhood. The designers and architects and developer on this case thought it would be better to have the residential up against the residential, and rather than have a wide garage, which would go up 9 stories essentially and still meet your requirements, or 8 stories and still meet your requirements, the tower itself, as I said, is stepped back significantly. In addition to that, it's only 70 feet wide as it meets that transition zone. So rather than have, for example, the garage in this case is 120 feet wide, it's a 140-foot lot, rather than have that entire lot on the north end near the residential to the northeast with a garage, we have a tall, slender tower that's only takes up about half the lot. That is also reflected in the calculations that you see in the plans, which show that, for example, the amount of open space we're required to have on the ground floor is 2,000 square feet or a little over that, while this project has over 16,000. In total, we've got almost 40,000 square feet of open space in the project. So while we are exceeding the limit on that northern end, with the alternative design, what we've done is that we're still not at the maximum height that would be allowed by the zoning. We have a taller portion within that transition area, but we've more than made up for it, we believe, with additional open space, with stepping the tower back, and with a tall, slender tower meeting that space. The last thing I will say is we also have a site, as you know, to our south, which could be redeveloped. By keeping this tower where it is, we keep the maximum amount of space with air and light between those 2 towers, rather than have the city code minimum 60 feet between what might be built to our south. I think the total is like 140 feet, yet still basically centered on the site. And if any of that made sense, I would be very surprised.
Well, I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying, but you know, is your rendering on Exhibit 3, page 7, an accurate rendering or reflection of what you anticipate the tower to look like as it's juxtaposed against the adjacent properties?
Is this the view that's looking to the south?
Yes.
Yes, I would say the answer is yes.
All right, so across the street is a church, but also across the street is City View.
That's right, to the northeast.
And so you're saying that that's in a zoning district that will ultimately be torn down and redeveloped?
I don't know what will happen in City View. Wish I'd bought a few units at City View many years ago. But I do know that the area, for example, 1 block further to the west, Mayor, that property is zoned RAC MUE, I believe. And the entire area is located within the Regional Activity Center.
Right, but how do we square this proposal with the transition zone ordinance, which originally was aspirational, and then this commission said, we want it to be codified. So because it was never being aspired to. So how do we as a commission square that ordinance with this proposal and still be respectful of the promises that were made to the community that we want to see development, we want to see changes in the density of the downtown, but so long as it does not impose an undue burden upon the existing homeowners that live in the area.
Well, I think you do that by looking at these projects on a case-by-case basis, as your code would provide.
Okay, so we're looking at this one,
Yep.
Exhibit 3, page 7.
So I may not have them in the same exhibit pattern you had, but I assume, is that the view you're looking at, potentially? Or
I'm
this
looking
one?
at your Exhibit 3, page 7, and I see the northwest aerial rendering, it's called. and I see that, I see City View across the street, and I see our that's our fire station, right?
Yeah, your fire station on the view.
That's not going anywhere.
No, that's not going anywhere.
No.
This is the building, which again, on the ground floor, you've got rather than have a 35-foot step back, this this building portion here is actually set back 50. And then, as I said, from the center line, this tower portion is set back 70. I think what's important, because Mayor, these are great questions. I think what's important is to analyze how this compares to, first of all, what we originally proposed and where we ended up after your staff got a hold of it. And then, and also from input from the district commissioner and you all, but also look like what would meet code? What is that alternative and what would be better? And that's why I think you put those provisions in your code that allow you to look.
Yeah, but it's just speculation to suggest that Habitat for Humanity is going to become another building site.
Well, then think of it that that's not even there. Just think if
Well, that's what you're showing here.
Well, okay, well, pretend the blue's not there. So what you're seeing there is what was originally proposed. The next slide is what would be built and comply with your code. So this just basically flips the tower. What you see, and whether the blue is built or not, this complies. The building's no shorter. What you do end up with, though, on second is a substantial garage, still about 87 feet tall, that takes up the entire frontage along Second.
Well, first of all, let me stop you right there. So if you were to bring the parking podium to the north side, first of all, if you lowered the height of the building, you wouldn't need as much parking, number one. Number two, you would redesign the parking podium so that you could wrap it in something that is not as offensive as just a wall of parking. So we're not just saying flipping the design of the building. We're saying redesign it so that it's appropriate to the residential setting in which is currently being proposed. I mean, you can't just plop a building that you take off a shelf that you just want to put it on a site that you purchased and say, okay, we're going to build.
Well,
you have to be respectful of the environment in which it's being built.
Understood. And I think what you see in this final drawing, from our perspective at least, is a building that is respectful of that by doing a few things. First of all, it tiers down on either side. Above the ground floor area where we have really plentiful arcades and again, commercial space, I know something important to you, over 6,000 square feet of commercial space. In addition to that, the area around the tower has much more open space than you would typically have in a tower like this, and then the tower itself is stepped back. One other way to look at it, Mayor, is this is the second floor actually, but as you go up the building, you know, what you see on the left, which is the south, is an efficient, typical garage. That's the garage you would build. And that other plan, by the way, wouldn't come in front of you for an alternative design. By putting the tower on the north side, yes, it's closer to the other regional activity center, the Northwest Regional Activity Center, within the transition zone. However, the actual impact of that tower, we believe at 70 feet wide, is less intrusive than the garage itself would be, and provides much more space around the entire building. So this is the entire site. And you see, rather than have the tower, you know, we're not asking to be a typical downtown core where you would have the tower right at the street front. It's pushed way back, yet it still provides, if someone builds to our south, we've got that room. The tower itself is much more narrow. And we believe that by having that residential facing the residential, it does provide for a better environment for the people who are going to live here, no doubt, but also for the surrounding community. Helps energize Second, helps make that connection between the Bright Line and the project. And with this center core right at the northeast corner, which provides the lobby space, the open space, we'll really continue to activate this area. Well, we'll begin to activate this area beyond what Brightline and City View has already done.
Okay.
That's my.
Okay. First of all, I think I made a mistake in not asking people if they had any disclosures. So let me do that first. So Commissioner Moritas, do you have any disclosures?
Yes, December 14th, 2021, Robert Lockery, Michael Huntress, and Tim Weber.
Okay. I also have met with Mr. Lockery and with his client with regard to this building. Commissioner Glassman?
Yes, met with Mr. Lockery on September 29th, 2021, and March 10th, 2022.
And Vice Mayor?
Yes, with counsel and client.
Okay.
And I should also say numerous site visits.
Okay.
I needed to study the alternate design.
Yeah, I understand. So Commissioner Moritas, do you have any thoughts regarding this project?
Well, when I look at this and I do see that it's close to Brightline, I think it's important, A, that we have more housing near our mass transportation. Brightline is one example, but people living here would also be on the coastal link once it comes through the tunnel eventually. And so I think that's an important place to build. And if we want more affordable housing, we need to build more housing. So I think this makes sense.
All right, Commissioner Glassman?
Yes, and as Mr. Lockley said, this project has gone through a lot of changes driven by staff, so I wanted to thank staff for that as well, because I do think what's in front of us today is much better than what was proposed. And I do agree that the downtown master plan is met here. I think the alternative design meets the overall intent of the downtown master plan. And I agree that this is a much better project because of that alternate design. Thank you.
Okay, Vice Mayor?
Thanks, Mayor. Robert, a couple questions on this. You know, you've heard me talk about this before in terms of, Commissioner Moritas mentioned it, affordable and workforce housing. You know, you've heard me mention before, you know, the opportunity, you know, to explore ideas of units for veterans, first responders, teachers, any opportunities like that in this?
You know, what we see right now, but is not a specific requirement that's in your code, but you have the commitment, particularly with where this property is situated and where it is. I think this will be workforce housing. These will be people who work downtown, and certainly anyone who works for the city, works as a first responder. You know, we're happy to provide them the first opportunity to get a
Wait, when you say workforce housing, is this lower income housing?
This is not.
This is market rate housing.
That's correct.
This is not workforce housing. This is market rate housing.
That's correct.
Okay,
But it's for people who are working, but yes.
I get that, but I don't want anyone on this commission to think that this is going to be housing available to
absolutely
people who have 80% AMI or
120%.
This is
That's
market
correct.
rate.
That's
Okay.
correct.
But still, when we have more units, it makes the rates lower even for people who are working and paying market rate rent. That's why I think we need incentives to build more units, especially around our Brightline and transportation.
Well, I don't disagree with that, with the market approach to trying to, you know, create, you know, an environment where the price of housing will eventually try to level off. But we also made a commitment to the community that if we're going to continue to absorb additional housing and additional population, that we can't impose, you know, oversized structures that are going to affect single-family home neighborhoods or residential neighborhoods like what exists across the street. And I'm just concerned, well, why do we bother passing the ordinance for
Transition zone.
Yeah, the transitional zone if we're not going to adhere to our own ordinance? It's like we're just ignoring what we just passed. So, I mean, I hear what everyone's opinion is, but I have to say I just disagree. I'm trying to be consistent with things that we've agreed and we promised the community that we would do, and now the first opportunity comes across our desk and we're going to just violate it. So, I mean, that's your choice, but I'm just saying that, you know, we made a promise and the City View neighborhood is going to be staring at a 400-foot tower every day. So, I don't care how far you push it back.
I mean, think about the other development projects that are coming even south of Broward, I mean, that we've been talking about that are kind of around this area. So,
But they're not right across the street from residential housing.
You know, this is one block north of Broward Boulevard. I mean, it's a major corridor. I hear what you're saying.
I know, but
this
I
is
mean,
our downtown.
Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. I understand. All
Greg,
right, any further questions?
Yeah, Mayor, I just had a question for Greg. Greg, as we think about just developments in general, I mean, and for example, take our police, right? We've talked about how we really would like to have housing possibilities for Fort Lauderdale police officers to live in the city. And it's, you know, increasingly difficult to do that. Do you know of, or are you aware of other cities that as they contemplate development plans and projects that there's a designation for a certain number of units, you know, a small number, but for first responders? Or have you heard of, seen anything like that?
I have not.
Okay.
But it's a nice idea.
Yeah.
Because it certainly adds value to everything.
Yeah.
I've heard of that.
Have you heard of that,
And
Mayor?
I've heard of that, and what it basically is just another way of dressing up an affordable housing component in a market rate housing building. So in this case, I mean, you have a firehouse next door. It'd be nice if they could live in
Right.
that
I mean, that's
building,
what I'm
right?
thinking.
I'm
So
not
it's
disagreeing
right
with
there.
you, but there's no offer to make any portion of this
Right.
building for affordable,
Yeah.
meaning people who don't make as much money as the market would otherwise demand. So.
What I've seen as an alternative to that idea, Ben, is that the city would give a voucher to the first responder, the firefighter, the police officer, and they could use that for housing. I haven't seen the opposite, where we ask the developer to designate, units for the first responders or firefighters, but I've also seen the state has just passed legislation that I believe gave an extra $25,000.
The problem is that the state
Their tax-
legislature has told us that we cannot impose restrictions upon developers' profit, and this would be a typical example of imposing that. So we would be in violation of the state statute.
You have to be careful with that.
Yeah, but you can give a voucher. We
Can't
can
the-
give a voucher to our first responders
Voucher,
to
you
use
can't.
for housing.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Greg.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? Anyone else wish to speak on this item that has not yet spoken? I can only give you one chance, sir. All right. Will someone move to close public hearing?
Moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes.
Commissioner Glassman,
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis.
Yes. Someone like to introduce the resolution?
Introduced.
Is that to approve?
To approve.
A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, approving the issuance of a site plan Level 2 development permit for an alternative design that meets the overall intent of the downtown master plan for the development of a 36-story, 400-unit mixed-use multifamily residential and commercial retail development located at 199 Northwest 5th Avenue, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, in the Downtown Regional Activity Center West Mixed-Use Zoning District. Vice Mayor Sorensen,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas,
Yes.
Commissioner Glassman,
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis.
No. So that passes 3-1. Congratulations. Now we move on to R5. This is a resolution accepting the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee's 2022 Affordable Housing Incentive Report and authorizing the submission to the Florida Housing Finance Corporation. No one has signed up to speak. Anyone have any questions with regard to this? All right, there's none. I do have a comment, though. I just want to make sure I'm looking at the same thing. So in this report, I just want to find it. In this report, I believe one of the incentives that was offered was to reduce, yeah, here it is, page 5 of 10, is to reduce the parking requirements. In other words, in order to incentivize affordable housing, the committee on which I sit, one of the recommendations is to say to a developer, well, you can reduce the parking requirement. So if you have 100 units and you want to have only 50 parking spaces, we'll let you do it. And I can't agree with that. So I would vote against this if that's still included in the incentive program. I want you to be aware of that.
Is that housing units near transportation, or is it just overall housing units? Did it
Let's say
separate?
there's 100 units in the project.
Right.
And it's going to be affordable housing.
Right, but is it near a bright line or something?
It doesn't
Or-
matter where.
It doesn't, okay, anywhere, I would say if it's
Anywhere in the city.
near transportation, it may make sense.
I agree,
Yeah.
but if it's not near transportation, and there's no need for it to be near transportation. So the recommendations for 2022 on page 5 are, 1, allow accessory dwelling units in all single-family, that's the mother-in-law addition. Lot size reduction and amended setback, so you can, if you have a 10-foot setback, you can reduce that setback to increase the size of the dwelling unit to allow for more bedrooms. Density calculation exemption, so if there's a density of, say, RM 25, you could increase it to RM 30 or 40 as long as it's going to be affordable housing. Parking reduction, I just described that, and the impact fee waivers. So these are the recommendations that came from the committee, which I voted against because I said, what you're doing is you're making a community that's already suffering from lack of parking and traffic, and you're allowing greater density in single-family neighborhoods, which our communities have been complaining against. So, anyway, that's really this 10-page report. It comes down to that one page right there on page 5.
Mayor, how many people on your committee opposed as you did?
Oh, it was all. I was the only one who opposed.
You're the only one. Okay, all right, man.
Yes, it's
You're
my night.
You're special. You're very special. That's right.
You obviously had a lot of influence on that.
Had no
Great.
influence.
A lot of-
Because they don't appreciate what has happened. I mean, they agreed to a parking reduction, and I said, "What is the sense of a parking reduction if we don't have enough parking?" And it just went in one ear and out the other. So again, this commission passed an ordinance saying specifically that you have to have one parking space per unit, whereas before we didn't have that. Now
Wait, this
we
is for
require it.
single-family homes, though.
I'm sorry?
This is for single-family.
No, it's not it's for any affordable housing project. It's not just for single-family homes.
Page 5 of 10, where it says new recommendations for 2022?
5 of 10, yeah.
Am I going the wrong? It's for 2022. Public, or is it Exhibit 1 or 2?
I'm sorry?
Exhibit 1 or 2?
Exhibit 2.
Okay, Exhibit 2, page 5. I think that might be single-family.
And what
And it's
city
accessory
attorney
dwelling
or
units. Maybe I'm looking at the wrong slide.
Oh, no, okay, let me, in all single-family districts, okay, a parking reduction. But what they're saying is that where you have single-family homes, hold on, there are two sections here, hold on.
I think this is to allow the accessory dwelling units, so the
Hold
little
on.
tiny homes.
Hold on, there's another section. There's another section about multifamily and the reduction of parking.
Different sections.
Hold on a second.
Is that on page 8?
It's on page 8. Multifamily developments containing affordable housing units are permitted to seek the parking reductions.
What letter is that?
That's
F.
F.
Frank.
F.
Consent of the reduction of parking. Affordable housing parking.
maybe help, Greg, can we get Chris or Anthony to
Yes.
kind of share with us the theory behind parking reductions for affordable and community impact?
But it already says that in section 47-20.3 that multifamily developments containing affordable housing units are permitted to seek parking reductions. That's
Correct.
That's already there.
Yes.
Yes, so Mayor, that's there. That has nothing to do with this is a different scenario than when you're talking about the requirement that we voted for one space per downtown unit. And also there's a big
But it
argument.
can go,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
They can seek parking reductions and they can go below 1 unit per, 1 parking space per unit. That's the difference. They can seek a reduction. If we currently have 1 parking space per unit, they can seek a reduction below that amount. So it would contradict an ordinance that we already passed.
But I think this is specifically for,
Well, it does say they can seek it, so it's
they
not
can
a
seek
guarantee.
it.
Do you wanna-
There's no guarantee you're going to
Yeah.
get it.
Is there?
Yeah, so the 1 per unit.
Well,
for a
we said the
multifam-
same thing about transitional zoning too, but look what happened.
If I could
Right.
just clarify, the 1 parking space per unit for affordable multifamily dwelling is the standard for those types of developments. It's
Wait,
not
say that again?
The one space per unit is the standard for those type of developments in the code. It's not a reduction request.
Right, but can an affordable housing developer ask for a reduction of that requirement? Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and that's what I'm arguing against, because we already have a parking, look at Flagler Village. They're complaining that we don't have enough parking in Flagler Village, and here we want to reduce it even more.
So Anthony Fajardo, City of Fort Lauderdale. There is the allowance that you can still ask for another parking reduction, but it still has to go through a process, our current code.
What does that mean?
So it's studied through transportation and mobility against the ITE manual, and there has to be standards that are analyzed against the recommendations of the manual to determine whether or not a parking reduction for that particular project in the context of where it is suitable. So if it's close to transit, if it has other alternatives that it can share parking off-site, or if the residents are typically not, they typically don't have multiple vehicles per household. So those are all factors that can be put into a study, and then it comes forward. You still have to go through a process to get it approved. But we have already adopted some regulations that allow us to address affordable housing, what Chris Cooper just mentioned with the 1 per unit. And then we also have in the CRA, for example, you can be an administrative process to get a parking
But
reduction.
all that is an application process. It doesn't mean you're gonna not allow it. I mean,
But that's not citywide. That's only in the CRA. This is
Yeah,
an-
but I'm just saying, what, this is only for the CRA?
No. The administrative process is only in the CRA. What I'm trying to say is that there is a process throughout the city for a parking reduction. It just happens in the CRA. You can do it administratively. In the rest of the city, you have to go through a typical process, which is planning and zoning board.
Okay. All I'm trying to point out to the commission is that I personally had no problem with all the other incentives, but I just think a parking reduction doesn't make any sense. For a city, this is the problem we had in Flagler Village. We took away the parking requirement, and we devastated a neighborhood that continues to demand parking, and we find parking to be a big challenge in Flagler Village. It was the biggest mistake that any previous commission made, because once you take away the parking requirement, people still need to park. Look what happened to that building just north of Broward on Federal Highway that's still sitting there empty after 7, 8 years. I argued against that passing of that approval of that site plan because it had no parking.
But that's not
Guess what?
residential building, that's a commercial building.
Thank you for making the distinction.
Well, there is a
But
distinction.
it's a distinction without a difference. What I'm trying to explain to, it's a distinction without a difference. To say whether it's a commercial building or residential, you still need parking. That building has sat empty for the last 7 or 8 years because it's a totally unusable building. No one can use it because there's 6 parking spaces for 30,000 square feet.
So I do want to be clear, the item before you is really just an incentive report. If there was anything to happen to codify additional language, that would have to come to you. We are not changing the ordinance at this time.
Well, we're voting on this.
A resolution to adopt the incentive report is what the request is.
Report.
But if we adopt it, then we're gonna agree to codify it. I mean,
No. You have to go through a separate process.
I get that, but
Okay.
I mean, why not stop it now?
Understood. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Okay.
Right. But Mayor, also, these are incentives that your committee came up with, because when you're talking about affordable housing, sometimes you do have to go above and beyond, quote, what you will see in a lot of other places, because, again, these are incentives to make it easier to develop affordable housing.
Yes, and that's the same incentives we used in Flagler Village to even build market rate housing. We took away all the requirements of sensible development, including reducing parking requirements to 0, and height restrictions unlimited, because we thought, well, we needed to throw all these incentives to the developer to try to jumpstart the development process. Well, it did jumpstart the development process, and now we have a mess. So we have to be very mindful of the fact that we are in a rapid growth environment, and that whatever incentives that we provide will be taken advantage of. And I wouldn't blame the developer. But the point is that we have to be smarter, we have to be respectful of our neighborhoods, and we have to understand that if you have a building that has very little parking, it's not going to make a lot of sense for the rest of the community if I have cars parking all over the place.
But it's not unheard of, and just so you know, because I do speak to a lot of folks in Flagler Village, especially younger people, they don't even want cars, to be honest with you. They look for rapid transit, they look for ways to get
It's
around.
your district. You're not telling me that Flagler Village doesn't have a parking problem?
Calm down. Calm down.
Well, you're insulting my
but Flagler
No, I'm not.
Village is marked.
This has nothing.
saying that, oh,
No.
young kids don't want
Thi-
cars.
This has
Give me a
nothing.
break.
This has nothing to do with your intelligence.
Okay.
This has a lot to do with. Go speak to some young people once in a while, and you will see that patterns.
I know a few
you
young
will.
people.
You
they
will
don't
see.
have cars.
You will see that patterns and habits have maybe changed a bit over time.
I'm glad you hang out with all these young
I'm
people.
just
that
telling
don't
you.
have cars.
Look again. Your committee tried to come up with incentives. We've already established the fact that we don't have enough affordable housing. We do not. So to create
I
that
don't have
and
enough
to
parking either.
incentivize
I just want you to know that.
to incentivize developers
Parking
to
committee.
create affordable housing, sometimes you have to just throw something else into the pot that makes it a little bit easier. That's all. It's a trade-off, like so many things. That's all.
Okay.
That's all.
You're dealing with the devil here.
Yes,
Okay.
well, Mayor, the people I know that are young can't afford a car and their own apartment, so they just live at home. So it is a problem.
Yeah.
Hey,
So
if you want more and more of those
you might
people
have
to
to-
live
you
in Fort
probably have to give
Lauderdale,
up one
that's
of them.
great.
All right,
Okay.
Mayor, I'd like to introduce it, please.
It's been introduced.
Can I say one more comment? I'm sorry, when you brought up page 5.
Go right ahead. Go right
You're
ahead.
talking about accessory dwelling units. Please think about this before you pass an ordinance one day. Just make sure that they can't necessarily rent them out as Airbnbs, and there's this rapid
We have,
turnover.
the
Put some
state
kind of
legislature has
restriction.
taken that authority away from us, so they can be rented as Airbnbs. That's another argument against accessory
Okay,
dwelling
well,
units.
I'd wrap your arms around that before you pass that ordinance. Make sure, somehow, maybe the state will change. Somehow, if we have these accessory dwelling units,
But we can't impose that restriction. The state legislature says anything we do to limit the profitability of a developer by more than 15%, we have to make up that profit. So,
Well,
I mean,
anyway, think about that before, just hash that out before you pass that accessory dwelling unit.
well, there's a resolution to pass all of the incentives that were recommended by the Affordable Housing Committee, so
They're
advisory committee. So that's on the table. It's been introduced, and you can either vote for or against it.
And again, all this is authorizing the city manager to execute all documents associated with the submission of the report to the Florida Housing Finance Corporation. So Greg, you're just relaying this to the FHFC, if I'm tracking that right?
Relaying feedback.
Saying that?
Relaying the feedback.
Relaying
from
the feedback.
community.
Yeah.
To the state. Okay, great. And any ordinance in the future will obviously come before the commission
Correct.
for the mayor to share his perspective and immense wisdom on, which would be amazing.
Intelligence. He used the
Youthful
word intelligence.
wisdom, youthful.
He used the word intelligence.
Intelligence, yes, of course.
Mark my words.
Mark your words. Thank you. Introduced.
A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, accepting and approving the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee's State Housing Initiatives Partnership Program 2022 Affordable Housing Incentive Report and authorizing the submission to the Florida Housing Finance Corporation, authorizing the city manager to execute any and all documents relating to the submission of the 2022 Affordable Housing Incentive Report to the FHRC and providing for an effective date. Vice Mayor Sorensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas?
Yes.
Commissioner Glassman?
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis?
No. The resolution's approved. On to R6. We have a number of people who signed up to speak. This is a resolution approving a City of Fort Lauderdale fiscal year 2022 not-for-profit participation agreement with the Delta Education and Life Development Foundation, Inc. in the amount of $96,000. We have all these people sign up to approve it, support it. Is anyone signed up to speak against this item? I can save you all a lot of time. Are we good?
We're
Okay.
good.
Yeah.
Do I hear a resolution?
I do have a question. Is there any parking on site? Is it? There is? Okay.
Mark
I
my
just wanna
words,
make
Commissioner.
sure. All right, thank you. That's very important. Thank you.
Do I hear someone like to introduce the resolution?
Introduced.
Okay.
A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, approving a City of Fort Lauderdale fiscal year 2022 not-for-profit grant participation agreement with Delta Education and Life Development Foundation Incorporated, authorizing execution of the grant participation agreement, providing for a waiver, severability, and effective date. Vice Mayor Sorensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas?
Yes.
Commissioner Glassman?
Thank you for your good work. Yes.
Mayor Trentalis?
Yes, thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You can stay and enjoy the show if you wish.
Please stay. Please don't leave.
R7, a resolution approving an application from Bahia Mar LLC to permit the use of a floating structure as a place of business. We have one person sign up to speak just for responding to questions only. Busy night, Mr. Lockery. Anyone have any questions? Someone like to introduce the resolution?
Introduced.
Been introduced.
A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, pursuant to Section 8-146A of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, approving an application from Bahia Mar LLC to permit the use of a floating structure as a place of business subject to certain terms and conditions, providing for an effective date. Vice Mayor Sorensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas?
Yes.
Commissioner Glassman?
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis?
Yes, and the resolution is approved. R8, a resolution approving amendment number 1 to the master lease agreement between the City of Fort Lauderdale and Bahia Mar LLC for city-owned property known as Bahia Mar. We have 2 people signed up to speak, but only Mary Fertig is here to speak on the item. Mary, are you still here? Oh, there you are.
I don't see Mary.
Mr. Lockery signed up for questions only. So quiet. Good evening.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Well, we were surprised when we got our agenda the other night to see this lease amendment. And in going through it, there were several questions. Unfortunately, we just had our association meeting, and with only a couple days' notice, we really couldn't delve into what the issues are. The main thing I want to mention that there seems to be a new rendering on the end of this document, and it may be better, it may not be, I don't know, but none of us know really anything about it. So my request tonight is quite simple, that you defer this for a meeting or two in time to to give time for a community meeting so that we can get some explanation. There seems to be a new L definition of podium on page 3. And I guess many of us are confused as to whether all of the structures, hi Pat, all of the structures are going to be built on one podium or whether they're all on separate podiums, whether the green space increases, whether the green space declines, whether this is better for the boat show, whether it's not better for the boat show. But we just simply don't know the answers to any of that because there's been no community meeting. I know in the last go-around, Bill hosted a community meeting, and in our neighborhood, which is within the notification area, joined in, and I think some others did too. But just a community meeting would be a great thing. So my request is that you defer this, have a community meeting, and I know it's got like a 10-year build-out or more, so I'm not sure that deferring it 1 or 2 meetings is really going to make a difference in the long term. So thank you.
Mr. Boileau, thank you, Mary. Mr. Boileau, do you want to tell us what the salient features are of this amendment?
I can, and generally, and maybe Mr. Lockery wants to explain it in more detail, but we were approached by Bahia Mar because they hired a new architect to provide a different rendering and do a few changes to the proposed site plan. And rather than change the site plan that was proposed for the master lease, they decided to add it as an additional exhibit as a potential to the additional one that was also included in the master lease, keeping in mind that all this has to go through site plan approval. So this is just conceptual.
Where is that proposed site plan? I thought it was an attachment.
It is page 9 of 9 to exhibit 2.
Page 9 of 9.
The very last page.
I'm sorry?
It's the very last page of that exhibit.
Yeah.
Hold on. Okay.
So from a lease amendment standpoint, again, I'm not an architect, so I just, obviously I saw the visual and saw the differences, but with regards to the lease, a lot of it is ministerial changes with regards to, so I'll give you an example. The configuration of the buildings have changed where they've taken the porticos or the overhangs out. So there's a pedestal that's created for some parking, which will be dedicated for the residents, but there'll be additional parking there that can be used for others on site. Well, that has to be accommodated through the easement language, so there had to be some changes with the easement. With regards to the construction of the hotel, understanding, I believe, that they want to get that going as soon as possible. There's a condo component, as you're all aware, at the top of the building. So in order to get that built, before they even get to a condo association, they're going to go ahead and get that built, sublease it to the hotel until such time as that association is created. But again, they're going to be condos. It's just there's tweaks that we had to do to some of the definitions in order to accommodate some of these things. A lot of it is just very technical. It doesn't change densities. It doesn't change, the amount of units. It doesn't change any of the core components to the main, to the master lease.
It does actually shrink some of the footprints of the original buildings, does it not?
I think Mr. Locker can maybe speak to it, but I think there's an elimination of one building. So I can't really speak to the site plan because I'm not an expert.
I do know this is the first time the public has seen this proposed modified site plan. It has never really been made public before. Is that correct?
To my knowledge, no, I don't know what kind of, no.
Okay.
I'm not aware of that.
Mr. Locker, are you still here? Oh, there you are. You better be here. You signed up for a bunch of others.
Yeah, I know.
So, can you explain to us what the salient features are of this?
Sure.
Of these
Yeah,
changes?
it's exactly, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioner, exactly as your city attorney indicated. In further refining what may be a potential site plan for this site, there's an alternative site plan. So it's being added. So now there's actually three. There's the one that's already approved that no one seems to like. There's a proposal, and now there's a third proposal. And yes, Mayor, it would delete one of the buildings. It does kind of shrink the envelope of the construction area, gets rid, as the city attorney indicated, gets rid of the overhangs over some of the areas around the perimeter, kind of keeps everything that is there for being developed within its own envelope. And as the city attorney indicates, the changes in the lease are affecting those potential changes as well as some cleanup items as well.
So it changes a lot of things. It changes the traffic pattern. It opens up some areas that would have been a little dicey for the boat show to be accommodated. I see more open space. I see reconfiguration of some of the buildings, like the hotel and residential building to the west.
And ultimately, of course, it has to go through a very robust public participation process through your wearing a different hat, not as your landlord, but in your regulatory capacity, going through a very exhaustive permit process.
So this has yet to be approved, and the public will have an
that's correct. We
opportunity
don't have rendering
to weigh
yet.
in on it, and
That's
planning and
correct.
zoning, and whatever proper processes will be followed.
This
correct?
essentially allows the developer to begin that process when and if they choose.
Okay, all right.
But Robert, could you just stay there? Because, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mayor. I want you to finish. You finish? Oh, go ahead.
Yes.
You sure?
Yes, I'm finished.
Okay, no, because I just wanted to, and I probably will have some questions for both of you. So, I mean, you don't have to stand there. I apologize, but if you want to, you can. So I want to know why, Alan, is this happening now as opposed to just down the road when a site plan will be submitted? Because obviously this is still all conceptual, right? This is not anything set in stone.
As far as I'm aware, is because the architect had come in and a new architect had come in and made changes, they approached us right away and said, well, we should probably clean up the language since we're not replacing the original one, but we're adding one. They just wanted to go ahead and add it and make the changes to accommodate that should the city commission decide that that's a better plan and ultimately if that's what's proposed. So it was just to accommodate that. I don't know that there was anything particular in the timing, but since there was a new concept that was being added in addition to what was already there, we had to make some tweaks to make sure the language accommodated both.
Is there anything that's in this amendment that negatively impacts or talks about the boat show in any way that would vary from what we have already approved?
It doesn't change any of the language in the agreements regarding the boat show. I mean, as to what the impacts are with the new design, I don't know. But there's no change in the language with regards to that.
So all provisions related to the boat show in all of the documents that we've passed, the master declaration, lease, phase leases, everything is still consistent in terms of the boat show?
There's been no changes in those regard.
No changes. Should I ask Mr. Lockery, or should I ask you about the change with the podiums and those overhangs or those porte-cocheres or whatever you want to call them?
Probably Mr. Lockery. I know the elimination of them, but he probably has more detail with regards to the actual
Thanks.
change.
So, Mr. Lockery, could I just ask you about that? There were some questions about that at the at my pre-agenda meeting last evening. So explain the elimination of those overhangs and with relationship to now with the podiums, and then how that would affect the boat show.
The previous project had portions of 3 of the residential buildings that came out over the driveways that surround, kind of the perimeter driveways close to the promenade. The new design gets rid of those completely, so that driveway area, that open space area and where the promenade is now open to the sky. Instead, you have the residential buildings and the hotel basically on a central parking facility that would be in the middle of the site. They'd be like up on that second floor of that.
So basically then what you're saying is those overhangs, which we did get a little pushback from the boat show the last time because there was some question about the overhangs impeding the air-conditioned tent space and how that would all fit. So now that's not even a question anymore. They're just being removed.
This new proposal, that would be removed completely. That's correct.
So are the podiums then extending out any further than they were extending out earlier?
No, it's no, not at all.
To make up for the loss of the portico? No, so there's no extension of the podium into the space that we know that we need for the boat show.
That's correct. One way to look at it is, and you know, those porticoches went all the way up with residential units. It's all now being contained in the center of the site rather than sticking out over closer to the water.
Okay, so now this conceptual exhibit that will be attached on its way to the DRC process, you've eliminated a building.
Yes.
Okay.
I can show.
And obviously the ingress egress is now through the center too. So that's a very different configuration.
That's correct.
We're not voting on the site plan tonight.
No, I understand. No,
Okay.
I know, this is conceptual.
Right.
But I just want
But
to
I
make
mean-
sure that I understand the difference in this exhibit as it's going to be attached to the documents that we've already approved, because then that's the whole reason for this discussion, is to clean up the language and make sure that when this gets to DRC, someone says, hey, that's not the conceptual plan that you guys approved back in, April? I don't remember. Was it April?
March, April, yeah.
March, April.
So the old plan, correct, had a driveway around the perimeter, yet there were buildings that overhang over those buildings. I mean, over that driveway around the perimeter and went up. There was a central driveway that went in the back, had connections to the individual buildings and to a parking garage that was in the back. What's being proposed now is a central driveway into the site. The perimeter road will remain and will no longer have anything overhanging it or interfering it. You'll be looking right up at the sky.
Okay, so speaking of the sky, we had a discussion last night, also at my pre-agenda meeting, about the terminology of air rights as it appears in the CAM. There's a lot of confusion about air rights. I try to explain it, but I'm not an attorney, so I'm not always able to totally explain it. So if you could, I think I know what it means, because we own the dirt, we're the city, we own the dirt, we own the site, but in order to build on that, and folks are going to occupy these boxes in the air, you have to have air rights. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden you're just going to one day be able to add height to the building without coming to the commission, which someone said to me last night. You're not going to be able to, the air rights here are really, you explain it so that it's really clear.
I would explain it 2 ways, and neither way is probably Alan would probably explain it a little more clearly, but for example, the residential units in the hotel will be sitting on a structure, the podium structure. That podium structure will be owned by an association. Those buildings will be built up on the second floor, so they'll be in the air. One way I look at it is my office is on the 3rd floor of my office building, right? It's an air right that I have. My lease doesn't call it that, but it's the same concept. It's within the building, and that's where my lease is.
So it doesn't mean that all of a sudden the developer will have the ability to just add floors and build higher and
No,
go
that's
higher,
all subject to the next phase, which is
Right.
the regulatory phase.
Right.
And
Those
Commissioner-
portions of the lease don't affect that.
And
Right.
Commissioner, if I could point out too,
Yes.
the air rights are still a component of what was already in place or what's
Yeah.
already in place with the phase leases. Because again, we own the dirt, as you stated, and there'll be not fee simple, but there'll be ownership of these units that rise above the dirt that we own. Now, they don't have a right to own our dirt because it's our dirt. So you create literally these boxes of air that people have ownership interests in, but it's that would be part of the phase leases or regardless of how the building's really constructed, the fact that you're going vertical, you have to create those rights for those ownership interests in the condos. So
And they're
it was
still
the same
subject to
thing.
the old underlying lease. They're still,
Correct.
yeah.
Yes. So basically, Alan, just again for the record, you're telling me that this is ministerial, that this is all going to be just because you need to clean up language so that when this moves to the regulatory process, DRC, Planning and Zoning, Commission, everything is consistent and tight. And now also with a new conceptual site plan, so there won't be any kind of confusion or discrepancy when it does hit the DRC regulatory process.
Correct. And the whole framework stays the same. You still have the master lease. You're still going to have phase lease. Each building will have its lease. Everything, the master declaration will be the same. The structure of what was approved stays the same.
Okay. And then obviously the public will have quite a bit of opportunity to weigh in as we go through this entire process.
Correct.
Of what we're going to see. So, all right, thank you. I appreciate the clarity, and I just wanted to make sure that that was all on the record. Thank you.
You have any further comments?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Mayor.
Vice Mayor, do you have any comments?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Let's see, so I think probably Alan's the best for this. So there's, I think, 3 site plans now, Alan, that have been
As Mr.
submitted?
Marker stated, right, so there was the original one that was approved back, what was it, 2017, 14, whatever it was, that is technically approved. There was the other conceptual plan that was brought to you when the master lease, phase leases, and master declaration was approved. And then there's this iteration here that's added to that as an alternative based on the new architect's rendering. That's correct. So
And
there's
so, do I have it right that the developer could follow any 3 of those plans or none of them? Is that right?
It's not really, so they have approval on one. So technically, as we discussed ad nauseum last time, they could literally build the one that's
that.
already
Yep.
built, right? But nobody wants it, even them. The other 2, they have to submit, again, these are concepts. They would have to obviously pick one, and they would have to submit that as site plans. These aren't even site plans, they're conceptual. So they'd have to do all the workup and everything that's needed to be submitted for DRC. So they would have to choose one. They'd have to, and obviously at some point, if the commission approves of either, they could make that selection and move forward with the DRC process.
Okay, yeah. So they could use any of the 3. They could pursue any of the
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
They could pursue any of them, and they can keep providing updated ideas and so forth and continue to pursue any of them.
With the commission approval. Again, you have to approve this evening in order for them to amend and provide another alternative. So presuming there would be another one in the future, they have to come to you to get that approval.
Yep. So it's not, it just doesn't eliminate anything. It just gives them more options.
Right.
Okay. Robert, let's see. Question on the, as you kind of adjusted this, have you been talking with the boat show, working with the boat show on this?
I don't know that we have.
Okay. So again, just one of my many concerns is the boat show and making sure that, we're not doing things that are detrimental to the boat show. So maybe let's get the boat show. I see some folks from the boat show. Anyone from the boat show want to?
Well, keep in mind, Vice Mayor, they're
Come up
not
here.
allowed to talk to us about these.
What's that?
The boat show folks are not allowed to talk to us unless it's in a public forum.
Right, but the boat show can talk to Bahia Mar.
Right.
And that's not happening and really hasn't in a lot of ways. And I think that's just one of the many concerns I have as we just look at the.
Do you want to ask Ms.
And I'll just remind, just to note that we're all still in litigation. We've moved to dismiss to get out of the lawsuit. Hopefully that'll be granted, but we are technically still in litigation.
Yep, thanks. So, sorry, okay.
So have you been looking at this, working on this? Have you reviewed this, the latest?
Vice Mayor Stephanie
Conceptual.
Toothaker and Matt Sacco on behalf of the boat show parties. And Philip Purcell and Andrew Duell are also here. When this came out on the agenda that was published on Friday, was the first time we had seen it, and no one from the boat show had any knowledge that this was coming forward. We've not been approached by the developer at all.
Okay.
But again,
So
we're not
it-
approving
it-
a site plan, right?
It could be, I want to say it could be worse, it could be better, we just don't know. We've not had an opportunity to review an actual plan. The same thing that's attached to the backup is what we have, so when we worked with the developer prior, we worked in CAD, we were able to lay the boat show out on the plan. I recognize this is not here for site plan approval, but there are some, from what we can tell, there are some rights that are changing, and to be honest, we have no idea because we've never had the opportunity.
What are those rights that are changing?
I don't know what the air rights do. I actually don't. I have no idea what the air rights will do and what happens to the plan. I don't know, if the lease that's proposed tonight, if it changes what they can actually build on the site. Like I said, it could be better for the boat show. We just don't know. We have
But
no
isn't this
idea.
all conceptual?
I don't know. That's a question for Mr. Lockery.
Yeah, the air rights don't affect the master lease. They only affect the phase leases when the construction actually goes
Right.
forward.
Air rights won't affect the land.
No,
Right?
not for the general use of the site, so it doesn't
Right.
affect the boat show at all.
Well, so the agendas have been out for 5-6 days now. Has anyone looked at all the backup and found any objections?
We looked at it. Our team looked at it, and we're kind of left scratching our heads,
Over what?
not knowing what it does. We haven't had an opportunity. Supposedly, there's a new site plan floating around that's proposed to be submitted. We've not had an opportunity to review it in the context of the boat show. Like I said, this could be better. It could be better for the boat show. We just don't know the answer.
But won't we flesh all that out when this starts to go through the regulatory process?
Well, I think our concern is that if they bring a site plan forward that's already been approved as part of a lease amendment, not that the plan has been approved, but a conceptual version of that plan has already been approved. If it is better for us, that's great. We're thrilled. If it's not better for the boat show, then we're left in the position of them saying, you had an opportunity to object to it when it was attached as a conceptual version on the site, on the lease amendment that went through.
So Alan addressed that. There's a conceptual plan that's being attached as an exhibit, as Ms. Toothaker just said. So she has a concern that, okay, what if that changes it? I mean, how bound are we with this conceptual site plan that's attached to an exhibit when it starts to go through the regulatory process? How much does that have to guide what is submitted by the tenant?
Well, you would be agreeing to the conceptual plan. So that would be, in general, the concept plan, you would be agreeing to that. Now, as you know, site plan that changes, there's tweaks here and there
Right.
that have to come through with regulation, how much, loading docks, so on and so forth.
Right.
So there's always tweaks to that.
We're not stopped from disapproving the ultimate site plan.
No, you're not at all. But you have two hats. You're wearing a regulatory hat and you're wearing a proprietor's hat, right? So here you're acting as a proprietor. So you're looking at the concept and saying, this is workable, this is something that we would possibly approve. Then when it goes to DRC, you're going through your regulatory hat.
Right.
Obviously, as you very well know, going through the regulatory process, if all the boxes are checked off and the code is met, you have some discretion, but not a whole lot.
Some discretion for what?
With regards to the ULDR requirements.
So we are bound if.
Well,
we approve
you're
this.
conceptually right. So
Right.
So the concept itself, I mean, not every measurement to every inch, but essentially the concept as a whole with the amount of the buildings, the general layout, the way the main entry will be towards the center. So the general concept, you would be bound because you are accepting that as the proprietor. Now, if it doesn't meet code, obviously you don't have to approve it. But if it meets code, you're going to be in a situation where you were in before with other developments where, again, they check off the right boxes, they meet the code. You have very little discretion at that point if they've met the ULDR.
Can we approve this without the conceptual drawing?
And
No, because then you absolutely can. I wouldn't advise it necessarily because then it's even more unguided, because the changes that we make, the technical changes we're making to the lease really correlate to the additional rendering that's conceptual, but nonetheless the rendering. So it makes sense that the two should go together.
Well, also, Mayor, the staff will, when this starts to go through the regulatory process, they're going to get into whatever is eventually submitted and make sure that it comports with all of our ULDR regulations and requirements. They might make some changes, but, you know, I've looked at this, the revised conceptual site plan. I personally think it's much better than actually the one we saw the last
I agree,
time.
but keep in mind that the original concept was also compliant with the ULDR.
Yes,
Which
but
was
this
the
is
653 units.
This to me is very much about architecture also, and in removing something that people found objectionable. And
I'm not disagreeing.
no,
with
I know,
you.
but again, I feel comfortable knowing that this is all still just conceptual. There is it's more of a guide, of course, because it is a drawing that's showing us something different than the last time. But you know, again, this will all be fleshed out once something is submitted to DRC. We will have a chance. And what I would say, well, I don't know where Ms. Toothaker went, but oh, there you are. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I would say that we are all very concerned that the boat show is taken care of.
We appreciate that.
That's a priority. But I do believe that when I go through this document and I read it and then I look at the conceptual site plan, I'm not fearful of it. I'm not concerned that this is going to be detrimental to the boat show.
No, and I appreciate that. As I said, we're looking at a one-page concept plan that gets attached as an exhibit that you're approving in concept tonight, and yes, it has to go through. Our only concern is, you know, and we don't want to stand in the way of the project. We want the project to go forward. Our concern is it's very hard. We took that page off of the internet. We don't have the benefit of seeing whatever plans you've seen. We've never seen them. We took it off the internet, and our team tried to put it into CAD to see if it was better. It could be. It looks like it probably is. It looks like it's probably better, but without having the benefit of meeting with them to lay the boat show out, we just don't know. We have no idea. And it would have just been, it's a little surprising to us that they would, you know, we keep hearing this is better for the show, it's better for the show. It would have been nice for the show to be asked.
No, and I definitely understand that. And I know that as we continue to go down this path, the relationship will only get better. It can't get worse.
Can't get worse.
So I'm looking forward to those kinds of conversations and dialogues, and because I think we have a lot of time now between now and when this hits the DRC level. I think we're going to have a lot more conversation. So I'm not overly concerned here with what's in front of us. I have to rely
I
that
think you've had the chance to see plans that we haven't seen. So
No, we haven't seen plans. What plans have we seen? No.
We haven't seen any.
We haven't seen plans. No, all we have seen is what you have seen. We see a change in the conceptual and we see some change in terms of language, but we haven't seen plans.
Well, so let me ask you this: is it the Marine Industry Association and the Informa's position not to vote to approve this item?
we would just like the opportunity to review whatever
But do answer
conceptual
me
plan.
yes or no. Is the
It would be
position of both
our
those
position
parties
that we would like the opportunity to meet with them before you move forward. Yes.
So you want us to defer this item?
That would be our preference, yes.
Okay.
Mayor, if I can just correct one thing that I said with regards to the ULDR, beyond the requirements of the ULDR, there are some requirements in the lease that Commissioner mentioned before with regards to the boat show. Obviously, they have to comply with those within the lease, not just with the ULDR.
I mean, I agree with Commissioner Glassman that just looking at the picture, it's a far better site plan for everybody. But the devil's always in the details, and I hate to have my hands tied to feel like if they come back with a significant modification, they'll say, "Oh, it's just an administrative change." I don't want us to feel like we've committed or we're stopped from preventing any significant modifications that would be a detriment to the boat show. So, I mean, I mean, as long as I know that we're not bound by that site plan, then I can move forward with this item. But if we're being told that, as long as it looks close to that, then we're kind of stuck with the approval of this composite that we're being
But
given.
they can actually come in, there's 3 site plans now, you have to realize. I mean, they could actually, according to our attorney, there's 3 options.
There are 2 that have been approved.
Well, there's one that was
This would be
approved by
the third.
the prior commission, in 2017, that's on the books.
Right.
There's that, and then there's the one that we did last March or April, and then there's this one.
Correct.
Right,
But we're not approving this tonight.
oh, we're not?
We're not approving the site plan.
No, we're definitely not. We never have approved a site plan.
No.
Oh,
That's what I'm
everything's
saying.
been conceptual.
No, I think we approved a site plan in 2017.
17.
That was
Last
a site
commission.
plan.
No,
Last
this
was-
commission hasn't, this commission.
I'm just
did
saying,
not-
17 was a site plan.
Right.
These are
That's
2
approved.
conceptual.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the conceptual narrows our abilities. Alan, or Greg?
Narrows your ability. I mean, you can always ask for more, but if they
Sure.
if they
they
stay
can
within
say
right,
no.
exactly.
Yeah. Is it prudent for a conceptual plan like this for the Department of Sustainable Development to take a look at this, understand this, give general feedback about it? Because we are going to be limited by it.
There's nothing for them to really look at. I mean, the trades that they look at the level they look at, there's not detail for them to decipher what.
Yep.
Again, it's so conceptual.
It's so conceptual, which
Can
to
I
my
recommend-
point I think makes all the sense. If it's so conceptual and just vague, it makes all the sense in the world for the boat show to spend a little bit of time with the developer to make sure that this all works and makes sense. The other question I have, Alan, is air rights. So do we, at the Arts Park, did we talk about air rights, and is that in the lease and so forth?
There's no lease because it's a license agreement, so we don't even get into that, and there's no residential component. So
Okay.
you're not selling any portions of it. That building is actually owned by the city in its entirety.
Okay, gotcha. So we won't impact, I'm just trying to think anywhere else in the city where we've talked about air rights, but nowhere else.
No, I mean, there's Broward, obviously the New River, well, I guess they're condos now or apartments. That's with Broward County. They have their
Yep.
rights issues there because that was a condo at some point. I think it's a condo now. But for us, I don't believe so.
So really, it only comes into play when we're taking public land and a private entity is building condos or residents on it, then we
Right.
have to cede air rights to them.
Right, you're creating a proprietary interest apart from yours that's separate
Right.
from the ground that you own. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
All right, thanks.
Alan, I have a question. 'cause
So
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
If we did nothing ever at all with this, even if we never saw it again or didn't hear it and we just kept kicking this down the road and something is submitted to DRC, does that make a difference that we are not dealing with what you're presenting to us today as ministerial changes for these documents?
Well, the ministerial changes comport with the architectural changes that are being made. So if you do nothing, then you're going back to the proposal that's already in place. So if you're not going to change like for example, if you're not removing the overhangs and you're not changing the pedestal, there's no point in changing the cross easements because then at that point that necessity isn't there anymore.
But I think what the commissioner is asking is, can this come back to us and be voted on all at once? Meaning, can we defer this to our next meeting and allow the parties to review it and come back with a better feeling about what's being proposed here? Can we wait until site plan approval comes before us and then vote the amendments at the same time?
No, you don't want to, there's no point in waiting for site plan. I mean, you've already agreed to a concept now that they can go forward with. So they're adding an alternative that you can follow. To wait until site plan approval, then you would be going on the old plan, not the new conceptual plan. Because again, as you as the proprietor are going to need to give approval to that. You're not, again, not with your regulatory hat. You're not going to be dealing, you have to deal with it as proprietor.
Right, but can we wait to amend the master lease agreement that's being proposed tonight? Can we wait until we're given the site plan to approve? Or do you, why do we have to?
Technically, you could, but before they go, presumably, and Mr. Lockery maybe can speak to it, but before they're going to invest, I don't know how many, possibly millions of dollars in preparing the site plan of a concept that they don't know whether you're going to give the nod to or not. I don't know that any developer would take that risk.
So that's what's at issue here then.
Probably, but I need to let Mr. Lockery speak to that.
Yeah, that's what's at risk, certainly. I mean, again, this is just giving us another opportunity, and there's a little bit of the old deja vu all over again. You know, there's an approved plan, which
We've been through this so many times.
Well, I
My head is
know,
spinning.
and you'll recall there was a point at which we submitted not we, but the applicant submitted a site plan many years ago prior to having the ability to even submit it. And they got not in trouble, but they were slapped on the wrist and said, you can't do that without at least getting the okay to go forward. So we learned that lesson. We have to at least get an okay to start a process. And remember, we have an approved site plan. We came in with a project, or our clients came in with a project in March or April, which I think everyone who looked at it, maybe not everybody, but I think a lot of folks with open minds said, that's a lot better than what was already approved. The new plan, and I can put it up on the screen, you have it as your attachment. It is just that, it's a two-dimensional drawing, but it's better, I think, in my opinion, for everybody than the March one.
Well, I'm
So
not
we
disagreeing.
keep making good improvements, but if we don't have the ability to submit it, then it's all for naught,
All right,
essentially.
all right, let's wrap
So
this
wait,
up.
I have a question.
All right,
So,
you're going to make
Mr.
the
Lockery-
recommendation because it's your district, so.
Yeah, Mr. Lockery, what do you see as the gist of why this is in front of us tonight? What is the purpose of this resolution approving this amendment? And
So
as succinctly as you can
Yeah,
say.
so that your tenant can determine that it's worth going down a path with yet another alternative and spending the money required to put together a package that then has to go through every bit of review as it would ordinarily be required to.
So they
Because
don't wanna
short of having that okay, stick with what's already approved.
And the language that's being cleaned up is what?
All it is cleaning it up. It's just being consistent with this type of proposed lease. It's not taking away any of the boat show's rights. It's not taking away any of the city's rights under the.
Is it in any way affecting any of the documents that we have approved?
It's affecting them only to the extent that it allows this alternative plan to be done, but not in a way that's detrimental to the
So when
city.
you say the alternative plan, you mean, for instance,
The
getting
meaning-
rig of the overhangs?
That's right, get rid of the overhangs.
Egress, ingress,
Do a standard podium,
eliminating a building.
eliminating a building.
Okay.
That's correct, because all that's in that.
Okay.
In other words, right now, the only plan we can submit is with one more building than what we're proposing to build. That's
Exactly.
kind of how, I'm not going to say this is silly, but that's what we're up against here. We're trying to submit a project that makes a lot of sense.
I understand.
Thank
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Going forward, if there are any more amendments, or if there's even anything of substance, will you commit to talking with the boat show before other items come before us?
The only thing I can say to that is pretty well documented. The boat show filed suit against my client. They're in a countersuit. I don't want to speak to how that works because I simply don't know.
That I understand. That is also another point. Okay, I'm good. Thank you.
All right, what's your recommendation?
I had a long conversation with our city attorney about this. I have to take his word, considering we just gave him a raise and said, good job. I really think that we have to take that word and his expertise. And if he's telling me that this is ministerial, if he's telling me that what this does is give them the opportunity to present a better site plan down the road, then I have to say yes.
So you move to approve?
I move to approve.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? So the resolution's been introduced by the commissioner. Please call the roll.
A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, approving Amendment Number 1 to the Master Lease Agreement between the City of Fort Lauderdale as lessor and Ron Bahia Mar LLC as lessee for city-owned real property known as Bahia Mar, authorizing the proper city officials to execute the First Amendment to the Master Lease Agreement, repealing any and all resolutions in conflict herewith, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. Vice Mayor Sorensen?
No.
Commissioner Moritas?
Yes.
Commissioner Glassman?
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis?
Yes, and the resolution's approved. So we'll wait to So we do ask that your clients start to communicate with the boat show folks and make them part of the further planning process of this project. It would be very
I will
helpful.
make that request.
Okay. Well, I don't want, the reason why we had all this discussion tonight is because they were kept in the dark. Had they been, brought into the loop, we wouldn't have had this long, half-hour discussion.
Absolutely. And look, I don't mean to make light of it, and I'm not involved in litigation, so I don't know how that's going. What I can say is this gives us the ability to have something that we can at least start talking to some folks from.
All right.
Thank you very much.
We'll be watching. R9, resolution appointing Pat Riley as the city auditor, approving an employment contract, and authorizing the mayor to execute the employment contract. I think that Mr. Riley, you've been great serving the need and fulfilling the responsibility of the city auditor position ever since you began, and we appreciate all the work that you've done. I personally feel that you've done an amazing job, and you continue to ask all the right questions, and somehow you find all the answers. So I definitely would recommend that someone introduce the resolution approving you as our permanent city auditor. Introduced. Anyone have any other questions, comments? Commissioner Moraes, no comments? Okay, please call the
I also
roll.
want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. Keep it up, buddy.
Thank you. It's an honor to be the city auditor, and I'm happy to be working with a really professional staff and very happy to going forward with the team I have. Thank you.
A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, appointing Pat Riley as the city auditor effective October 18, 2022, approving an employment contract, authorizing the mayor to execute the employment contract, and providing an effective date. Vice Mayor Sorensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas?
Yes.
Commissioner Glassman?
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis?
Yes, and congratulations and thank you. Thank you. PH1, public hearing, quasi-judicial ordinance for vacation of a right-of-way 50 feet by 115-foot long portion of Valencia Street, Las Olas Harbor Club LLC. Anyone wishing to speak must be sworn in. Commission will announce any site visits, communications, or expert opinions received and make them a part of the record. Commissioner Moritas.
I'm sorry, PH1, yes. I met with Stephanie Toothaker on 10/18/22.
All right, so
I'm sorry, that's the date today. I met with Stephanie 2/23/21.
okay. Commissioner Glassman?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I met on May 6, 2022 with Stephanie Toothaker and client, and I met with, on 6/29/22, I met with city staff, council, and client as well, and site visits for sure.
And Vice Mayor? Vice Mayor?
None. Or, sorry, with council.
Okay, I'm going to have to recuse myself from this because I represent the applicant. So, Mr. Vice Mayor, you're going to take over from here.
Okay, great. Fantastic. So, let's see. I guess
H1.
we'll go into public hearing. Is there anyone signed up to speak, Mayor?
Yes, here.
Okay. Thank you. You're a wonderful assistant, Mayor. Keep it coming. Thank you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He's a keeper.
He's a keeper. He's worth it. All right, Bill Brown is up first to speak. Mr. Brown, come on up. Got 3 minutes. Let me transition.
Vice Mayor, do you want the presentation, or do you want me to?
Sorry, do you want to give a presentation? Sure.
If that's okay, is it okay, Bill?
Yep, sorry,
Okay.
Bill.
And let me just, and I can do it very quickly.
Great.
I'm not sure, can you see this screen? I'm not.
It's
There we
coming
see
up.
it.
There we go.
This is a right-of-way vacation request related to a future development project that's known as One Birch. One Birch is actually a piece of property on the beach where my client Sophia Milona used to have her single-family home. So she's owned this piece of property for a very, very long time. So this is the subject property. It's known as Valencia Street. It dead ends driving west into the water, and One Birch, as you can see, is on the north of the screen, and Portofino is our neighbor to the south. So we've asked for a right-of-way vacation together with Portofino. It's a joint, it's an application that Ms. Milona is processing, but it is supported by the Portofino Club because it actually is to the benefit of both of these properties. We're just showing you some quick images of the street that we're asking to be vacated. And it's kind of, it's actually an area where it's got a lot of homeless people, a lot of trash. It's been a bit of a problem on the beach. And I think that's what Mr. Brown was going to come up and say, but I don't want to put words in his mouth. So this is a view looking east. As you can see, it's really just kind of a dead end. It's really only used by Portofino, and in the future, we hope it'll be used by the One Birch property. So what we're proposing is to reorient the access to the Portofino condominium and also create a lush landscaping, beautiful termination of the street. We are proposing to grant a utility easement back over the entire site. So it does have some existing utilities in it. Those are not proposed to be moved at all. It's just an opportunity to improve the overall street. So as I said, it does contain some stormwater infrastructure that's not being proposed to be moved. We're granting the city an easement back over the area that's being vacated. And then I'm just going to go back really quickly. On the One Birch side, Ms. Milona is granting an easement back to Portofino because the access to their condominiums association is very important that they have that proper access. You can see that on the screen. That's what it's proposed to look like. We did receive letters of no objection from Public Works. You can see here, this is the utility easement that's being granted back to the city. And we have a letter of support from Portofino. And we agree with all the, the commitments that we were asked to make. So there will be a resident walkway along the waterfront. There's a drop-off area, landscape improvement, and a reworking of the Portofino gate opening that actually improves the situation that they have today. And this is just this satisfies the condition. You can see that's the easement area being granted back, and just a little bit closer up of the Portofino and the One Birch. These are the letters of no objection. And I'm very pleased to report that when this went to the Central Beach Alliance, we received a unanimous support from the entire Central Beach Alliance. The conditions of approval, we agree with all of them, and we worked very closely with staff on those, and so we're satisfied to agree to those. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Great, thank you very much. Bill Brown, if you want to step up. Thank you.
Good evening, Bill Brown, President, Central Beach Alliance. I won't need the 3 minutes now after her presentation, but let me just say, first of all, I want to commend staff, the developer, the property owner, and legal counsel for the property owner. This is another fine example of how the community can work together with a developer or a property owner and city staff to come up with something that we can all live with. We're about now to engage in the next phase of working with them on the site plan for the structure. This is another example that we've seen in the Central Beach area of now, I think, 3 or 4 projects since I've been the president where we've been able to reach a resolution before it comes to commission. So I'm here tonight to proudly say, as Stephanie pointed out, that this is 97 or 100% of the membership supports this vacation. And I know, Commissioner Glassman, you were president for 7 years at CBA. I think you will attest the fact that it's probably the only time 100% of the membership's ever approved anything.
It was always usually 100% disapproved of everything.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we ask for your support in passing this so that we can get on to the next phase. We've seen this lot. I personally live a block down the street. It's been vacant for a number of years now. So we're looking forward to seeing the development of that site. And it's also another added benefit to the new marina that's going to add more value to that area. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it. No one else has signed up to speak. Is there a motion to close public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
City Clerk?
Vice Mayor Sorensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas?
Yes.
Commissioner Glassman?
Yes.
And public hearing's closed. Mr. District Commissioner, do you want to comments
Sure. Again, I wanted to reiterate all the comments and Bill and thanking staff and everyone and the applicant. This really was a team effort, the neighborhood as well. This is a great project because it's really going to clean up and beautify a real, what I like to consider a dead space. It's just a space that's been abused. It has not been used properly. And as Bill Brown said, with what's happening just a couple of blocks to the south with the Las Olas Marina, it's really going to create a beautiful, beautiful streetscape project that's going to go from this point all the way through to the marina to the Las Olas Bridge. So I'm glad we've gotten to this point. Everyone's really worked together on this. I think it makes great sense, and I'm very supportive and pleased to support and vote yes on this.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Moritas, anything?
I'm good. I can
Great.
move the item.
Fantastic. It's moved. Second?
Steve.
Second?
Just
Great.
need an introduction.
Actually, it's introduced.
Introduced. Great, thanks.
Introduce.
Introduced.
In ordinance vacating that portion of Valencia Street right-of-way lying west of North Birch Road, Lauderdale, Del Mar, according to the plat thereof as recorded in Plat Book 7, page 30, the Public Records, Broward County, Florida, bounded on the east by the westerly right-of-way line of North Birch Road, bounded on the west by the easterly right-of-way line of the Intracoastal Waterway, bounded on the north by the south line of Block 11 of said plat, and bounded on the south by the north line of Block 12 of said plat, located west of North Birch Road, north of Cortez Street, east of the Intracoastal Waterway, and south of Castillo Street, all said lands situate, lying, and being in the city of Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, Florida. Vice Mayor Sorensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas?
Yes.
Commissioner Glassman?
Yes.
And that passes. PH2, Mr. City Manager, City Clerk, it looks like the PH2
Yes.
request for deferral.
Yes, this is going to be deferred until further notice.
Great. Do we need to act on that?
The request, right, has been, so they need to vote on the deferral.
Need to vote on it. Okay, great. So introduce the deferral
Motion.
motion.
First and second.
It doesn't have to be to a date certain, but is there a time period for deferral or just open-ended?
The letter said 6 months. The request was for 6 months.
6 months it is, if that's can be granted.
As long as the city's monitoring the building and making sure nothing happens.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so the motion is for 6-month deferral. Is that the motion? Okay.
Just need a second.
Second, I'll second it.
Actually,
Yep.
technically, if the mayor can come back, you can't move because you're acting as the mayor.
He moved
I know
it.
it's very technical. Who moved?
Commissioner Glassman moved it.
Oh, okay. So then we need a second.
Okay, I'll remove myself from the seat so I can.
I know it's very technical, but just in case.
So.
We don't have anyone to second it.
She left. You moved it, is that right, Commissioner Glassman?
I did.
Can I second it now?
Now you can.
Perfect, thank you.
Vice Mayor Sorensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas is not present. Commissioner Glassman?
Yeah, you'll notice I'm the only one who doesn't get a chance to leave the room. Yeah, it's a good thing because we don't have a quorum,
Musical
right?
chairs.
I have to stay
Good.
here. I'm voting yes, and I'm staying here.
Mayor Trentalis?
Yes. So the item has been deferred for some time in 6 months. But I do also share the same concern of Commissioner Glassman. We want to make sure nothing happens to the building in the meantime. Moving on to PH3, public hearing and ordinance adopting a comprehensive plan amendment to add utility excluding electrical power plants use to the employment center land use designation citywide. No one has signed up to speak. Someone like to introduce the ordinance?
Introduced.
Please call the roll.
In ordinance of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, amending the City of Fort Lauderdale Comprehensive Plan Future Land Use Element Policy 1.1.9 to add utilities excluding electric power plants as a permitted use to the Employment Center Land Use Designation, providing for severability, repeal of conflicting ordinance provisions, transmittal to the applicable reviewing agencies, and providing for an effective date. Vice Mayor Sorensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas?
Yes.
Commissioner Glassman?
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis?
Yes, and the ordinance is now approved. PH4, ordinance amending the City of Fort Lauderdale Unified Land Development Regulations, list of permitted and conditional uses. No one has signed up to speak. Anyone have any questions with regard to PH4? There being none, please, someone like to introduce the ordinance?
Introduced.
It's been introduced.
Do you want to close the public hearing?
I'm sorry?
Close the public hearing?
If you
There's
don't have
no-
anybody
it's-
signed, that's fine. If
Okay.
nobody's
All right.
signed up, right?
I'm sorry?
Nobody's signed up to speak?
No one signed up to
Okay.
speak. Okay.
In ordinance of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, amending Section 47-6 entitled Business Zoning Districts of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida Unified Land Development Regulations to add radio broadcast facility, production facility, radio, television, and motion picture production as a conditional use, and outdoor television and motion picture production as an accessory use to 47-6.12 entitled List of Permitted and Conditional Uses, General Business District, and Section 47-6.13 entitled List of Permitted and Conditional Uses, Heavy Commercial Light Industrial District, amending Section 47-19.9 entitled Outdoor Uses of the ULDR to add criteria for outdoor television and motion picture production when ancillary to television and motion picture production, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, and providing for an effective date. Vice Mayor Sorensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas?
Yes.
Commissioner Glassman?
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis?
Yes, and the ordinance is now approved. Moving on to PH5, an ordinance amending the City of Fort Lauderdale Unified Land Development Regulations, list of permitted and conditional uses, Commerce Center District to add water treatment plant as a use. We have a couple of people who signed up to speak. Mr. Barrick Terrace, Mr. Boyd Corbin, Beta Benkowski, and Wendy Liederman. So, Dean, you're first.
Thank you. Why can't the city keep this
Can you
water
speak into the
thing?
microphone?
Huh?
Speak into the microphone.
Oh, can you hear me?
I can hear you
Okay.
now.
Why can't the city keep the water plant under its own preview instead of corporatizing it to an Israeli company, or at least find a Florida company to do it, and have a Wall Street controlled Israeli company do the water for the city and raise everybody's bill by 40%? It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't compute. Raising everybody's water bill by 40% is just not good.
I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Manager, but I think all we're talking about here is zoning.
Oh.
So it's not who's,
Right. It's
Greg,
zoning
clarify that
regulation.
just so we're all clear.
Yeah, we're not talking about water treatment plant construction or getting into a contract with a water treatment plant construction company. This is strictly for the ULDR modifications that are needed for a future water treatment plant.
Okay.
And so what does it mean, what does it do, just in layman's terms, so we can all understand? It allows for what?
I want to ask Assistant City Manager Fajardo to explain that in detail.
Dean, if you don't mind, you'll get your time back.
Hi, good evening, Anthony Fajardo. So basically, regardless of what the agreement is with whomever to build a water treatment plant, or whether we do it on our own, we need to change the ordinance to allow it in certain locations in the city. So all this does is acknowledge that. It has nothing to do with the contract. It has nothing to do with IDE. This is just to allow it.
Okay, so in other words, if we decide to build the water treatment plant solely by ourselves, we need to do this.
Yes.
If we decide to partner with someone, we need to do this. So all it does is allow us to build a new water treatment facility.
All it does is place that piece of the puzzle down so that we can build a plant through some means later on.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry, Dean, go ahead. I just wanted to clarify.
Again, I implore the city to look at other options, RFPs, whatever, and, it would be great, like a Florida company instead of an Israeli company and a Wall Street hedge fund. Why not a Broward County company and a Florida company doing the work, and not giving your water rights away to an Israeli international hedge fund, whatever.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dean.
Thank you. Boyd Corbin, followed by, is it Beth Benkowski? Is Beth here? Okay, and Wendy Liederman, is Wendy here? Wendy, you're here, okay.
Okay, so this is the wrong place to put a water treatment plant. Why? It's because it's 4 miles in the wrong direction away from where all the water pipes meet, where 5 Ash currently is being. So it means you have to add more chemicals to treat the water so it travels 4 extra miles. It's going to cost about $150 million just to put in the pipes to reach from there to Five Ash, and it'll take years to build the water lines. And then it'll cost an additional $485 million to build a new water treatment plant. As the 2021 Reese pilot study says, we can refurbish Five Ash for $170 million. And if we do that, we won't have to waste 5 million gallons per day as a new plant would. And it would not cost tens of millions of dollars a year for electricity costs as the new plant would. And the best part is you won't have to keep adding ammonia to our drinking water, which is so much healthier to do. And then you can use that $500 million saved and you can replace the water lines, because even if water comes out of the new water treatment plant clear, it's going to turn yellow as it goes to the beach, as it does now, and it's going to turn brown as it goes through rusty pipes in some areas. But here's the news that the city manager didn't know about. Tamarack and Oakland Park are considering backing out of buying water from Fort Lauderdale. So what's that mean for the other 5 cities that are buying water from Fort Lauderdale? Well, instead of 139% increase in their water bills, which is, conservatively projected now, it's going to go way up even further. So here's the thing. You can't really name a single successful P3 for a water treatment plant. You can name dozens of them that haven't worked out, but they all increase cost of water and decrease quality. And also you're tying yourselves down to a minimum of 17 million gallons per day contract if you build a new plant, and a maximum of 50 million gallons per day. So I sure hope you hit that sweet spot. And the for-profit partnership has no incentive for stopping to add ammonia to city tap water. So don't rush this 30-year contract. Let the new elected commission decide after November 8th. The Infrastructure Task Force Advisory Committee is against this contract. And Ben, just, don't leave this as your legacy. Just wait and let the new commission vote on it, for God's sake. I see you smirking there.
Boyd, we're not voting on a contract. This is zoning.
But you are, and you're going to. And then you're going to leave and probably not come back to politics.
Boyd.
Probably even leave the city.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Boyd, thanks.
Beth Benkowski is not here. Wendy Lederman. Wendy, come on up.
Thank you. Kind of just off the top of my head, I wasn't really planning on speaking. I know there's several people out front in opposition of what is the project is being preliminary set forth with these motions right now, especially with the collective bargaining, which got snuck through a little while ago. And now with this commercial land use, that implies that our drinking water, which is a vital resource to the public, that belongs to the public, is going to be commercialized. And that's fine if you want to say, oh, well, we just need to, whatever your jargon is, you want to privatize water treatment. That is what your ordinance says. You're commercializing it. That is not okay. And you want to do it at this site at the end of the runway? And Fort Lauderdale, you want to put it, there was a plane crash last night outside of Perry Airport. They had to knock down the whole grid just to be able to access the wreckage. And if that happens and 8 cities lose their water, not only will the project company be able to file for relief and, get compensation because the service was interrupted. I mean, you'd be knocking out and we'd pay the insurance on it. And do you have any plan for passing this with the FAA? Because I know that, you can't really attract wildlife, and there's all kinds of biological studies that are going to have to happen, but we'll already be locked into this 30-year contract before the project company even begins the design submittals, which they're in charge of. I mean, this is for the people. The people own this. This is ours. And it's a little suspicious that it's not publicized. Why is this not public discourse? If this was something to be proud of, then we should all be discussing this as a community because it affects everybody. This affects even the children that can't even have a voice to speak. And why doesn't anyone know? And when you put this at the projected spot at the end of the runway, what about that second drain well that you're going to have to get a permit for and figure out what to do? Because apparently it's a 2-mile drain well that's going to have to be moved. I mean, what's the plan for that? You're not even considering that. You're leaving it for the company that's not even based in the United States to decide, and they don't even think about that until you've already signed away our fate. And that's not what you're elected to do. That's not what your taxpayers are for. All right? Like, you guys are here to listen to the people who are actually your boss. All right? Sorry, I know you don't probably agree with that, but this is our water. It's a vital resource. It is not to be commercialized. Water is life. This is not fair. The people do not want this. How come vice mayors and other commissioners don't even know that their city's tap water is going to be privatized? I mean, that's criminal. It's criminal of the press to not cover this. This is not going to happen. I'm sorry to tell you that. You should really go by the Reese report and refurbish the existing water plant like it says to do for $500 million less and use carbon filters that are safe, and you don't have to do these burn-offs that aren't tested by the EPA. It's not going to happen. I'm sorry.
Okay. Anyone else wish to speak? No one else has signed up. Do I hear a motion to close public hearing? Do I
Moved.
hear a motion to close public hearing?
Second.
Moved.
Okay.
Vice Mayor Sorensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas?
Yes.
Commissioner Glassman?
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis?
Yes, public hearing is now closed, and this is on PH 5. Would someone like to introduce the ordinance?
Introduced.
It's been introduced. Please call the roll.
An ordinance of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, amending Article 2 zoning district requirements, Section 47-10, Commerce Center District, Section 47-10.10, list of permitted and conditional uses, Commerce Center District of the City of Fort Lauderdale Unified Land Development Regulations to add water treatment plant located greater than 300 feet from residential property as a permitted use, and water treatment plant located 300 feet or less from residential property as a conditional use to the Commerce Center zoning district, providing for severability, repeal of conflicting ordinance provisions, codification, and correction of scrivener's errors, and for an effective date. Vice Mayor Sorensen?
Yes.
Commissioner Moritas?
Yes.
Commissioner Glassman?
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis?
Yes, and the ordinance is now approved. PH 6, this is a public hearing, resolution approving a waiver of limitations at 10 Hendricks Isle for the installation of 15 wood mooring piles extending to a maximum of 35 feet into the adjacent Rio Grande waterway. I'm a little concerned about the definition where it says extending 35 feet. I'm just looking at the backup. I just want to make sure there's some clarification here. Hold on a second. There was something in the, I think it was in the minutes. In the minutes, Marine Advisory Board minutes, it says that the width of the waterway is 160 feet wide, but the vessels can extend as much as 64 feet into the waterway. And according to this, it says the slips will not exceed 30% of the width of the waterway, but the boats will exceed more than 30%. The boats will go almost 40% into the waterway. Is my math off?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, this is Tyler Chappelle, the Chappelle Group, 714 East McNabb. Just to clarify, there was some confusion, I think, in the distance across of the actual waterway.
I can't hear you, Tyler.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, sorry. Too tall.
So it's a 35-foot mooring, and it could extend, which the minutes say will not exceed 30% of the width of the waterway, but the boats could extend more than 30% if they could go 64 feet into the waterway. How do you square?
I think the minutes are a little confusing in that what was reflected in the meeting was that there was existing slips that are currently at the facility that are 64 feet out into the waterway, which exceeds the 30%, but the proposed new structures and new vessel sizes are within the 30% width of the waterway, which is 45 feet, and the structures are 35 feet.
So no boat will extend beyond 45 feet?
That's correct. And to clarify the point of the 160, I think there was some question on how actually wide the waterway was. The waterway is 160 feet across, and that's measured not only on property appraiser, but also in the NERMI Plat 4 for that island. It's 150 plus 10, so it's 160 total. I think there was confusion in that there was another plat on our side for Lauderdale Isles that reflected 150, but when you put the two plats together on each side, it's actually 160.
Okay. Anyone have any questions with regard to this?
No.
Okay, there being none, thank you, Tyler. Would someone, let's see, this is a resolution. Someone like to introduce the resolution?
Introduced.
Please call the roll.
And that's for approval?
Yes.
Hold on a second. He was here on behalf of the applicant, but he did sign up to speak. So should I close public hearing?
Yes.
Yeah, let's move to close public hearing.
Moved. Second.
Sorry. Jenna, did you want to speak?
No, I'm
good.
Vice Mayor Sorensen? No.
Vice Mayor
President
Sorensen.
Commissioner Moritas?
Yes.
Commissioner Glassman?
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis?
Yes. Public hearing is now closed. Someone like to introduce the resolution? Someone like to introduce the resolution?
Introduced.
Oh, I didn't
For
hear.
approval, correct?
For approval.
A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida pursuant to Section 47-19.3E of the City of Fort Lauderdale Unified Land Development Regulations granting a waiver of the limitations of ULDR Section 47-19.3C to permit Hendricks Group LLC, a Florida limited liability company, installation of 15 wood mooring piles extending a maximum of 35 feet plus or minus from the property line into the Rio Grande waterway, such property being located at 10 Hendricks Isle, Fort Lauderdale, Florida 33301, and more particularly described below, subject to certain terms and conditions, repealing any and all parts of resolutions in conflict herewith and providing for an effective date. Vice Mayor Sorensen?
Not here.
Commissioner Moritas?
Yes.
Commissioner Glassman?
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis?
Yes. And the resolution is approved. Public hearing 7, resolution approving a waiver of limitations at 2631 Northeast 12th Street for the installation of 3 triple mooring pile clusters extending a maximum of 48.8 feet. Anyone have any questions? No one signed up to speak.
Is-
Do you have any questions?
Well, I did. Is Tyler, does he represent that client?
Tyler's not on this one.
Maybe he doesn't. He must not.
No one signed up to
No,
speak.
you didn't represent. Okay, you're not representing that client. Well, I was just looking at the picture, page 14 of 22 in the backup, and it looks like there are 2 docks there. So I was kind of a little confused what exactly, or maybe someone from the city can help me. Okay, maybe. Yes, sir. Could you, I think you might need to be signed in, or sworn in.
Say it again?
Does he need to be sworn in to speak, to answer my question?
Did you want to speak?
I do have a question, because when I was looking at this, I couldn't
Could you come
tell
up to the
what dock
podium?
is being
Mind coming up to the
impacted.
podium?
It looks like there are 2. Maybe I'm just not looking at this correctly.
Good evening. Are you the owner of the property?
I own the property, yes.
I'm just gonna swear him in real quick.
Yes, thank you.
Sir,
Sir, would you raise your right hand? Could you raise your right hand?
Yeah.
do you swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for coming today. On behalf of District 1, I was just looking at this a little bit more carefully, and this looks like a great project. I see a picture of your house. You probably don't see exactly what I'm looking at. Do you have two boat lifts behind your house currently?
No, there's just a finger pier in the middle. So you have a finger pier in the center,
Okay,
and then you have 3 triple cluster pilings at 20 feet from the dock, from the seawall.
Okay.
Currently.
yep.
And then the second one is right behind the finger pier. Does that make
The one
sense?
right behind it. So, well, I guess that finger pier, it obviously is separating it. Will you have 2 boats there?
I have two slips there, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, you do have the two
And
slips.
then the new pilings will go directly behind the existing ones, but at 48 feet, 8 inches.
Okay,
there's-
so the width will be the same. You will, the
Exactly the same.
two boats, okay, even though it looked like you wanted to bring in a bigger boat, possibly, that's why you're,
That's why I'm doing it. I'm getting a bigger boat, exactly.
okay. And I haven't heard any complaints or concerns from any of the neighbors. I did check into that, so I'm sure you've talked to some of your neighbors.
Yeah, we actually were in the Marine Advisory Board and had a note of support from one of the neighbors' representatives, yeah.
Okay, great, and I saw that too, so, all right, thank you. I don't have any questions. I was just looking
Thank you.
for a little bit of clarification.
Okay. Someone like to introduce a resolution?
Do we need to close public
Yeah,
hearing?
if you can close the public hearing.
Well, he didn't, he was just answering questions, but
But he was
we'll
sworn
close
in, yeah. so
Move to close public hearing?
Second,
Commissioner Moritas?
yes.
Commissioner Glassman?
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis?
Yes, public hearing is now closed.
Introduced for approval?
Okay, introduced for approval, PH 7.
A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida pursuant to Section 47-19.3 of the City of Fort Lauderdale Unified Land Development Regulations granting a waiver of limitations of ULDR Section 47-19.3C to permit Richard P.C. and Catalin Vandenherk installation of 3 triple pile mooring clusters extending a maximum of 48.8 feet plus or minus from the property line into the adjacent Seminole Lake, such property being located at 2631 Northeast 12th Street, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and more particularly described below, subject to certain terms and conditions, repealing any and all parts of resolutions in conflict herewith and providing for an effective date. Commissioner Moritas?
Yes.
Commissioner Glassman?
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis?
Yes, and the resolution is now approved. Did Commissioner Sorens, did the Vice Mayor leave?
He said he had to leave.
He had to leave? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
I'm still the only one who hasn't had a break, just so you
Do
understand.
you need a break?
You've all left at various times and done what you had to do.
Okay, I didn't know whether he had just
No, he's gone for the evening.
okay.
Thank you.
Well, I think I'm going to go too. So.
You cannot.
Who would be in charge if you left?
You've
need
been
a
waiting all
quorum.
night for me to
Would it
say
be me? The previous vice mayor?
we need a
What is the
quorum.
protocol? That would be fun.
There's no Vice
Try
Mayor
this.
now to
Just
take
me
over.
Stay
and
where you
Steve.
are. Stay
Let's
put.
see what happens.
Stay put.
I have to pack. Anyway,
How are you going again?
OFR 1, first reading, ordinance amending the City of Fort Lauderdale Chapter 8 Public Beaches by repealing in its entirety Section 8-55.4 titled Food and Non-Alcoholic Beverage Service, and creating a new code section, 8-55.4, titled Sale, Service, and Consumption of Food and Alcoholic Beverages. Several people have signed up to speak. I'll call you 3 at a time, and please be prepared to speak. Mark Dickerman, 2 minutes, please, tonight, because it's getting late, followed by Mr. Horta, and followed by Ina Lee.
Congratulations. You need to take that off. 3 points. 1, I'm totally against this ordinance. 2, I think you should defer it until the new commissioners have been sworn in and allowed to give their, and I would ask that the fire chief come help me. I'm having a low sugar.
Well, what'd you say then? You asked what?
I ask that you defer this,
Yeah,
and I ask the fire chief come help me. I'm having a problem.
okay. All right. Mr. Horta.
All right, good evening. Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Josmani Horta, the General Manager and General Counsel of Beach Runners. We are a company who provides beverage and food delivery directly to the sand. I want to commend the commission going back to 2015 when they enacted the original act, which was to try to boost the economy. Unfortunately, and as the city manager said in a letter today, there was little to no participation in the program, effectively leaving no food and beverage service on the beach. I am very glad that the commission's revisiting this 7 years later. There's many great parts that I think have been improved on a personal level, but some of the things and the reason I'm recommending deferral, point number 1, the original bill was intended for all beachgoers. The current bill is limiting it only to hotel guests or the public, but only if they're sitting on a beach operated or beach rented chair. So essentially, you're excluding a lot of the locals from getting the service, which is a very nice amenity. In addition to that, the original bill included restaurants plus hotels. I don't know the exact reasoning, but this bill only includes hotels, where of course the restaurants could greatly benefit from the revenue they would get if now the restaurants had this service directly to all the beachgoers. Number three, I think it becomes a bit burdensome. Each hotel has to submit property lines as to the extension of how far into public beach they're going to go, when if you make it open to the entire public, now you don't need all those technicalities and additional work and expenses. And finally, the bill added alcohol. The prior bill did not. I'm not here to speak as to whether there should be or should not be alcohol, but I will just say that that may increase sales, but not necessarily, because the original program did not succeed in part because there were too many players, too many chefs in the kitchen. The different hotels and restaurants had to provide their own menus, their own staffing. Now times have changed. Now you could hire one company, 4 companies who with technology could have an app. Everybody on the beach could get the service. And logistically, these companies make it much simpler. So in the interest of the people, especially the locals who are the pulse of the community, I kindly recommend that this bill is deferred just to try to perfect it a bit more. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. You represent beach runners?
Well, I represent myself first as a resident of Miami-Dade who frequents Fort Lauderdale quite often. And I'm really just here speaking as from Beach Runners as well, a Florida incorporated company who has potential interest in operating business in Fort Lauderdale as well, at some point, perhaps.
Okay.
And we're a startup company. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ina Lee, followed by Mazen Sala, followed by Ramola Matwani.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, and I guess no vice mayor at the moment, and commissioners. So my name is Ina Lee, and I have been deeply involved in the redevelopment and upscaling of our beach since 1984. And we've changed, folks. So when we have hotels like the Conrad and the Four Seasons and the W, and we have competitors in Miami and Palm Beach and all over the world where you can go and you can have a daiquiri on the beach and enjoy a first-class amenity, that's who we've become. We're not who we used to be. We're now a world-class destination, and I think it's time we stepped up to the plate and made available to people coming in from all over the world and people that live here the opportunity to be mature, to enjoy amenity on the beach, enjoy some food and a drink, and that's what people are used to right now when they travel, and they are looking for those kind of services. So why should they go to Miami or Palm Beach when they can come here?
All right, great, thank you. Mazen, followed by Ramola Matwani, followed by Thomas Vago.
Good evening, Mazen Salah, General Manager of Four Seasons Hotel and Residences. Just to follow up on what Ina Lee just mentioned, what we're seeking to achieve is to be able to extend our service that our guests have come to experience in other world-class destinations. So we want to make sure that Fort Lauderdale is remains to be one of those destinations with our guest expectations today. And the reasoning of why the beach chairs and why the section in front of our beach is because we do pay a certain amount monthly to Boucher Brothers. That's the concessionaire that is in charge of the beach area. And we can only be responsible for the area in front of our beach. And that's the area we can be held accountable for, because there are parameters into what and how we serve, what we serve on the beach. And that is the reasoning behind it. So we want to be able to extend that hospitable service, that world-class service to our hotel guests, our residents in the building, and any guests that may be utilizing those chairs that are opposite our beach area that we are responsible for, and we want to serve responsibly too. That's it. And we're here today. I know this is a change for us here in Fort Lauderdale, so there may be concerns, there may be questions, and we're here today to answer those and hopefully put your minds at ease if there are any concerns.
Okay, great, thank you so
Can you
much.
just help me understand real quick? I haven't been down to right in front of your part of the beach. So you have a section reserved for guests at your hotel. Where do other people sit? Do they
We
sit
do.
kind of closer to the water, or do they sit to the north or south?
They can directly rent a chair and an umbrella opposite in our section of the beach from Boucher Brothers if it's open and available.
Okay.
Yeah.
How far do the chairs go, though? Do they go almost to the water, or it depends
They
on
do
the
not.
time?
It's about 4 rows of chairs, I would say.
About 4 rows, so there's still room for people to sit if
Closer
if
to
they
the
don't rent the
closer to
chair
the
or the
shoreline.
chairs are full.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's, you can rent a chair, and that's currently how it is. Will your chair service be expanded if we pass this so that you can offer additional food and beverage?
We are limited to the chairs that we have currently with the space that we have. We wouldn't want to overcrowd the space either. But as long as it's within the number of chairs that are assigned to us through the city's concessionaire, that's who we will be staffed and ready to serve.
Okay, so you all have a certain amount of chairs. Each of the hotels have a certain amount of chairs already, and that'll stay the same.
Correct. And we currently service those chairs. So we take umbrellas, we take complimentary water, we have body products, sun lotions, and so on, and beach games that are there already. So it's just an additional service to what we already provide.
And I believe we talked about this last time we brought this up, and I don't know if you know or I'll ask the city attorney, what were the hours that we decided upon to serve the alcohol? Was it, I know someone said they wanted to shut it down at 5 or?
Well, there's a debate that we'll have to figure out between first and second reading is that whether there's actual, right now it's limited to the operating hours of the beach, but we don't technically, I believe, have operating hours. So we have to check with Parks on that, but it would be commensurate with beach operations. But we could set whatever time the city commission wants also.
Okay, so we haven't decided on the exact times yet, because I
I
was
believe
thinking.
the language says, remains as the city defines what the beach operation hours are.
Okay, I thought it was a little limited when we were first talking about it, so hopefully we can make sure it's long enough that we can enjoy
Currently,
it.
it's 8 to 5, when Boucher Brothers is out there.
Right. That's why I thought it was a little early last time, because I thought it's light until 8:30 during the summer. Why can't we sit outside? Right? Okay, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
Romola Motwani, followed by Thomas Vago, followed by Jim Labrie. Romola.
Ramola Mutwani. 1986, we decided that we had to change the face of our city. We made some decisions then, and we made those changes not to serve alcohol on the beach, with a commitment that we will become a family destination, a world-class destination. With your help, with commission, with residents, and with businesses, we all work together so hard to be who we are today. And when we become world-class destination, there are some expectations. There are some consistencies in the brand. When a guest comes, they have some expectations because that's what they are promised and they are used to it. Since hotels, we started building luxury hotels, there was always a ask, but we wanted to be responsible. Wait till the time was right, and I think that time is now. I'm a resident. I take my grandkids to the beach, and no one is more concerned than I am because I lived those times and I'm living this time. So it's very important, I think, that the timing is right and we make this decision, move forward. Again, questions about why just hotels. We don't want to also, I thought about this, I live in a condo. Originally, my thought was that even condos should be included. But then it came to me that I think we have to be more responsible and start with a project where these hotels have infrastructure, they have trained staff, they have all the, their whole structure is in place. So it's I thought it's something that they need to, even for their brand name, so we should allow them, let them do it. We are not saying this is the beginning and the end of it. This is just the beginning. And we will be looking at it and see how we can expand on it. But I think to be really successful and do it right, this is the right thing to do. And I really strongly will urge all of you to look at it. And with, there can always be, that's why these GMs are here, to answer all your questions. If you have any
Okay.
question, I'm
Thank you
happy
so
to
much. Thank you.
answer. Thank you.
Mr. Vago, followed by James Labrie, followed by Dan Lindblade.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Tomas Vago. I'm the general manager of the Hilton Fort Lauderdale Beach Resort. And as many of my colleagues mentioned, that our destination have evolved, and the changes around the beach, it's really becoming a high level and a high quality luxury destination. The last 2 years, we were able to elevate our ADR to where we need to and attract the right guests to our city. And we know that tourism is one of the major drivers in our city. The easiest way to explain, there are many ways, but we really took the journey of our guests. And that's for us general managers, that's one of the most important, how our guests feel when they come here and what they see as opportunity. And we know that many destinations in the world, in a resort, you serve the beach as well. You have servers with the same hotel standard providing that in the beach. And in order to elevate our beaches, it has to be luxury come with service. And that's what we want to do. Basically, our licenses are on the beach as well. If you come to our pools, we're already serving our guests, and we have responsible serving, and we are liable for that. If we or our bartenders make something, we will hold accountable. I run the Diplomat Beach Resort in Hollywood before, and it's a 1,000-room hotel, but we tried the beach service and it worked, and it's much easier to control a smaller hotel in this destination and have the right surrounding hotels. So that's what we want, and this is what our guests would like to see, and this is what we want to do because our guests want to do it as well. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. James Labrie, hey Jim, followed by Dan Lindblade.
Mayor Trentalis and Commissioners Moritas and Glassman. My name is James Lurie, and I've been a resident of Poinsettia Heights neighborhood in Fort Lauderdale for 20 years. I'm the vice president of the Poinsettia Heights Civic Association and a member of the Fort Lauderdale Infrastructure Task Force Advisory Committee. I'm speaking here tonight for myself and not as a representative of the aforementioned organization or committee assignment. I'm not against the serving of alcohol on the beach. In fact, I welcome it. However, I don't believe one should have to check into the Ritz-Carlton or any other oceanfront hotel in order to get a beer, glass of wine, or a mixed drink. It seems discriminatory to me that as a legal age resident of Fort Lauderdale, I would not be allowed to consume alcoholic beverages while sitting only a few feet away from me, a guest at a beachfront hotel is allowed to consume alcohol. I believe this is discriminatory. The law has to be for all or nothing. Either alcohol can be served and or consumed by all adults on the beach, including those not checked into a hotel, or no alcohol can be served or consumed by anyone on the beach. Thank you.
Mayor, I
Get a clarification on that.
Yeah, if the city attorney can address what was just said, because that's been one of my concerns and issues after speaking with folks from my pre-agenda meeting last night. What about Mr. Labrie's claim about perhaps discrimination or unconstitutional?
It puts me in a tough spot. I mean, I've spoken to you individually about it. I don't want to necessarily telegraph ways to challenge the law, but there are concerns there from me and my office with regards to the disparity in who gets to drink alcohol and who doesn't. Part of the problem is that you have an ordinance on the books that prohibits alcohol consumption on the beach, yet you're going to allow it for some and not others. So that does create, obviously, a disparity.
So
Yeah,
the
but-
way to remedy it, would it be the way Mr. Labrie was saying, that you would just have to strike that ordinance so that alcohol is allowed on the beach?
Were you be to be challenged, yeah, you would have two options if you're challenged. One would be to not pass this and stay with the prohibition, or you get rid of the prohibition altogether.
Okay, thank
So,
you.
to follow up on his question, doesn't the city have the police power to enact ordinances to preserve the peace of the community and to recognize opportunities that we can still afford people certain rights, but delegate the enforcement of those rights in such a way that we're trying to preserve the peace? In other words, if we allowed everyone to take alcohol to the beach, we're going to have a circus on the beach. If we introduce a program where it's being monitored and restricted to preserve the peace of the beach, I don't see how that interferes with anyone's constitutional rights. My understanding is someone could go to one of the hotel chairs. Do they have to be a guest of the hotel? No. So they can go to one of the hotel chairs and be served at the site. So no one has to be staying at any of the hotels. No one has to spend the $4 or $5 or whatever hundreds of dollars needed to be a guest at the hotel. All they have to do is go to a designated area in which to be served. That's all we're talking about. So liquor is being offered to anyone and everyone on the beach. It's just in a certain area, which allows the city to maintain the order and the dignity of the beach and not allow it to turn into a circus environment. I think that's what we're trying to accomplish here.
Understanding that, but you have an equal protection issue because you have a criminal penalty, so you're going to have an individual standing here that you're going to arrest for having alcohol, and 5 feet away, because they're not purchasing a chair from the Boucher brothers, or they're not renting a room from the hotel, they're not going to be subject to criminal penalties. It's going to be very difficult for FLPD to enforce the ban and arrest folks when others are just a few feet away enjoying an alcoholic beverage. And you're going to get into, unfortunately, an equal protection issue. Also, on the enforcement side, post point of sale, police will not be able to really enforce. You can't, for probable cause reasons and everything else under criminal procedure, you can't go up to someone and say, what's in that cup? Is it alcohol? Is it not alcohol? You can't do that. So once that alcohol is sold by the hotel, if somebody wants to go past the high mean water line or wants to divert away from where the chair is, police will have no ability to enforce that.
Well, we can come up with a lot of what ifs. There's no doubt about that. But I think we're just trying to experiment and introduce this protocol, and at the same time, making sure that our beach does not run amok with a lot of drunks, which it tends to when you allow free alcohol on the beach. So I think that this compromise is an important step forward in trying to make our beach world-class, as been suggested, and at the same time maintain the dignity and the decorum of going to the beach in a family-friendly environment. So you can say, and you're the lawyer, and I understand how lawyers think. Lawyers think of what ifs all the time, but if that were the case, we couldn't do anything. There are always these what-if cases that are going to cross our paths. But I think that it's important for the city to take this step and see how it works. And I don't think it's an intrusion. I don't think it's a significant intrusion on anyone's life or rights to require them to consume alcohol within an area that is defined by the location that we are designated, which is in front of these certain hotels. I mean, that's just my opinion. But I think an argument can be made that that we have a public purpose in doing it this way, and that is to maintain the safety and dignity of people trying to enjoy our beach. So.
Well, I have to agree with Jim and possibly with Commissioner Glassman that I do believe it's discriminatory also. And I do believe that whatever law we pass has to be applied to our whole beach, just like we did the no smoking on the beach ordinance. It wasn't no smoking in certain chairs that you pay $20 for, something like that. There's just no smoking. It defines the beach as the public place, and then it allows behavior on that beach. If we want to deal with a problem like drunkenness or disorderly conduct, that is where we should hopefully get our police involved and regulate that. I brought the same point up when we talked about this the first time, and I said we may want to consider some sort of language that talks about the size of alcoholic beverages that are allowed on the beach, so that we don't have kegs or we don't have the growlers or whatever it is. You limit it, the size of the alcohol that someone can bring to the beach. I've seen that done in other places. So I do believe, I'm certainly happy to pass this. I think it would be challenged, and I think when it's challenged, then you'd have to change it, or we just change it now and allow it for everybody and allow it for the hotels on the beach and the restaurants on the beach.
So, Alan, is this practice followed on any other beach that we know of?
Miami Beach, but they've conceded that they're violating their own ordinance.
So how many lawsuits have been filed against?
No idea.
You have no idea. So,
And I'm not, again, my job is to advise you of the risk and what the law, what the law is, and you can certainly do that, and I don't know that we will ever be sued, but there is that possibility, and I'm required to let you know that that possibility exists.
okay. All right. Dan Lindblade. Thank you for your
I'm here.
patience. Sir, why are you standing?
What's that?
Wait, are you, what? No, you're, you've had your opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, Dan Lindblade, President and CEO of the Greater Fort Lauderdale Chamber of Commerce. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners, City Manager. We've reviewed this. We think that this is a good start. I've said to you before, and you've heard the saying, don't let perfection be the enemy of good. This is a start. This is a pilot program. I want to thank Sarah publicly and on the record for all the hard work that she did in putting this together and working it, and Alan for the work that your staff has done on this as well. But I've talked to enough hoteliers and enough citizens that they feel comfortable with this as a starting project. And the Chamber's supporting it 100% as a starting project, and we'll just continue to move on and see what we can do down the road. But I don't see any reason why you shouldn't move this forward.
Okay, thank you. Courtney Crush for constructive comments. And yeah, I have you, Bill. Well, it says constructive comments. That wasn't a box that you were allowed to check. You made your own up.
I did, sort of a, never mind.
All right, go ahead, constructive comments.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioner Glassman, Commissioner Moritas. Courtney Crush. I'm here this evening speaking on behalf of Per Sonda, who owns multiple properties on Fort Lauderdale Beach in the now North Beach Village area, about 600 hotel rooms, several of them with restaurants. Also speaking on behalf of Eitan Yari and his partner, business partner, Lior Abador, who own about a 4-acre block that contains the Elbow Room and also 2 parcels that front on Almond Avenue. As was mentioned, the 2015 ordinance that allowed service of food and non-alcoholic beverages on the beach was made property owners located within 1/8 of a mile of a lifeguard stand, which is 660 feet, to be eligible to apply for a license. That means that Per Sonda's Breakers Ave properties, which are in a ABA resort district, as well as the Almond Avenue properties that AJ and Lior have, which have an approved hotel on them, were eligible to apply. Per's guests, the North Beach Village guests, and I know the commission is familiar with the work done over more than probably, almost a decade, to restore, to create an upscale European village, attracts guests from all over the world, and Per would very much be interested in staying within the pool of properties eligible to provide an upscale, world-class food and beverage service on the beach. I know there is sand that is directly east of some of the hotels, but not each portion of the beach is across from a hotel or a retail establishment for that matter. And if I may, Mayor, for 10 seconds.
Go ahead.
Similarly, AJ would very much like for the city to have a conversation with restaurant owners. I know the goal is, again, to provide upscale, controlled, but there are restaurants on our beach, especially in areas where there may not be food and beverage service because there aren't hotels nearby, that would very much like the opportunity to discuss standards and providing that service for our local residents as well as international guests. So we would ask that the ordinance be amended to include the property owners that the current ordinance today does. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So what Courtney's describing is basically adding restaurants that are upland or across from the beach, basically, right? Or
Commissioner Moritas, I'm actually saying that not just properties that touch A1A on the west. The
Okay.
current ordinance allows you to go to Breakers Avenue, where the North Beach Village properties have Wine Garden, North Beach Cafe, and there are hotels there.
Right.
Those guests all go to the beach, so would like the opportunity to rent chairs at an open location, and with the upscale restaurants there, also provide a similar service.
Okay, and what you're describing also would be the restaurants down towards the Elbow Room and stuff like that too. All the restaurants would be able to serve across from them as well.
At least the conversation. And I mean restaurants, not necessarily, sit-down restaurants. How's that?
Right.
And I'm sorry.
So you're saying that the owners of any of the bars or restaurants along A1A should have the right to sell alcohol to people on the beach?
I'm saying that I think that conversation should occur with city staff, and this should return to you, because there are restaurants that I believe, restaurants that have SRX licenses, which means they sell more than 50% food, would absolutely like the opportunity to have a conversation. Similarly, behind the Elbow Room block, there is a parcel that has an approved hotel on it, which will be constructed. Again, going further deep, that hotel would not be eligible, and there aren't a lot of hotels nearby.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Bill Brown? Is Mr. Dickerman okay, by the way? I saw the ambulance came up. He's fine? Okay. Okay, thank you.
Mayor, as an EMT, I felt very confident with the chief being a paramedic. He was in good hands, so that's why I came back in. So thank you, Chief. Bill Brown, President, Central Beach Alliance. First, let me just say, we're not against or we're not here to support. Right now, and I'll explain why. When this
Constructive comments.
constructive comments, and I want the hoteliers to understand why. When you as a commission first discussed this earlier in the year, you asked that the Central Beach Alliance be included in those discussions. Within days, city staff contacted us. We met, the board met, we just happened to have a board meeting that week. We had a whole list of questions, concerns, comments. We were told that those would be addressed. Staff was waiting to get we asked for a list from the hoteliers, what they were asking for. We never received it. I followed up with an email with city staff for an update as far as the legal proposal. I was informed in the email by city staff that they had not received anything from legal counsel yet. And then just a month ago, the secretary of the CBA sent a letter to city staff asking where we're at with this. We were surprised to find it on the agenda when we received the agenda on Friday. So we're still concerned about some of the questions that have been brought up here tonight. And I think and I came here thinking that I'd heard a possible deferral. If it does not get a deferral, I would respectfully ask between first and second reading that all the parties get together, before it comes back for second reading, so that all comments, concerns can be addressed. And the big one that we heard from a lot of the members was the legal issue on discrimination. So it's still unanswered, still some gray areas. So I'd ask for your consideration on letting the CBA have a voice. And as with most projects and most ordinances, we always come to a resolution and collaboration. I think we can get there. It's just how we get there. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else wish to speak on this item? No one else has signed up. There being nobody, would someone like to move to close public hearing?
Move second.
It's up to you guys.
Commissioner Moritas?
Yes.
Sleep
Commissioner
on me.
Glassman?
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis?
Yes. Public hearing is now closed. Someone like to introduce the ordinance?
May I just make a few comments?
I'm sorry?
May I make a few comments?
As long as they're constructive.
Thank you. I will try my best. So we had quite an extensive discussion about this at my pre-agenda meeting. So I think that we're close. I want our hotels to be competitive with hotels, not just even on the East Coast, West Coast, but everywhere. And I understand the need to keep up. But I just think that we're not quite there yet, and let me explain why. So Bill Brown spoke from the Central Beach Alliance, and so it concerns me that their questions have not been answered, that they did have a meeting, but then no follow-up. And he's not unreasonable, and so I think we can make that headway. I have had phone calls a lot during the day today and also yesterday from some of the folks that Ms. Crush represents. Restaurants, bars, other hotels that are not going to be impacted right here. Folks from the pre-agenda meeting were concerned with some safety issues. They were concerned about how this would be enforced. They were concerned about city liability. Like Mr. Labrie had mentioned, they were also concerned about how do you pick and choose, you're a winner on the beach, you get to drink. You're a loser on the beach, you can't get to drink. So there were so many questions. Also, I didn't see anything in the CAM that actually talks about this as a pilot program or limits the time, and then it's open to an evaluation for us to look at it and see how it's been going. I don't want to belabor the point, but I do think that in this case, a deferral is warranted. I just think that everyone has to be able to come to the table and feel that they're being heard, whether it's those other restaurants, those other hotels, bars, neighborhood association. We're close, but I just want to make sure that everyone feels that they were listened to. That's all.
So I have a thought. So what about this? What if we just allow it to sunset in a year and we just get it started? And then it'll at least have a definite end and you all will have to revisit it. And then you'll have that year to bring to the table the restaurants, the hotels that might be a block or two off, and kind of have that year to dialogue. But I think we should probably get it started. I think it's important to the hotels.
We've been talking about this for years. So to say that someone doesn't hasn't been involved in it and that we haven't answered all the questions, I mean, I've been listening, we've been having this conversation since I was a commissioner. So I kind of like your idea. I think it makes sense. And it gives us it's like a pilot program and let it sunset after a year. Someone told me you need 2 years, though, because you got setup costs and all that other stuff. Is that still a requirement that you have 2 years, or can you do it with 1 year?
Well, also, are we talking about structures on the beach, or is everything going to just be brought across the street? There were also concerns.
I think they're going to be allowed to put up some kind of service pavilion on the beach.
Okay, well, how many of those? That was a concern that was also expressed last
However
night at
they
my
need
meeting.
to service their customers.
People were concerned about adding more structures, that they didn't feel that this was quite
Who's
defined.
concerned about that? Who's concerned about
The
that?
residents.
Okay.
But again, this all came at my pre-agenda meeting last night with the district.
The thing is, I don't think the residents really use the beach as much as we like to.
Oh, you'd be surprised. No, they
I mean,
do.
they go to the beach.
They do. Yeah, the young people who have only one car. Yeah, they
They don't
do.
have cars. They
They
sit on the
just,
beach and drink.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. Mayor, you got to talk to some more people, young people.
No, I think our residents are very concerned about
I-
this to the beach.
look,
I agree with you. I'm just
Again,
kidding.
for me, they do go to the beach, trust
I'm
me.
just kidding.
Again, what I'm saying is, for me, I didn't know if 2 weeks was going to make a difference to maybe just get all these people together, have a meeting, so people could be heard. But I understand what you're saying. But again, when you say sunset after the year, did you mean after 2022? I mean, it's
No,
just-
I'll give it a
12
year, a
months.
full year.
And then what about spring break? Is this going to work during March, or, I mean,
Well-
can we cut out a month? Will the city manager have the discretion to say, this might be a little too much during spring break, or what do you think? I mean, how does that work? I mean, there's just these questions that kept coming last night, and they're good questions. I don't want to,
Well, they, all your questions will have answers, but where will it end up leading you? What's the conclusion? I think that there are all these what ifs that you can come up with, but what's the end game here? Do you want it on the beach or do you not want it on the beach? That's really what you have to ask yourself, and maybe what the Commissioner Moritas has suggested might be a compromise to see.
Yeah, and I'm fine
let
with
us have the
that.
experience of what it's all about. If it turns out to be a problem during spring break, then we have that experience to know that we shouldn't do it during spring break. I mean, we don't know the answers to these questions because we're not soothsayers, but we need to have the experience in order to see how our community responds to this.
I understand. I just want to express some of these
I understand.
concerns that are
Your
there. And
concerns are valid.
I think they're valid.
They're very
I think they're good questions.
No one knows
and
the
then-
answers sometimes until we experience the opportunity. That's
So are we only going to delimit to, or are we going to extend it like the old ordinance has, like Ms. Crush had mentioned? Are we going to look at that language so that other hotels on the Barrier Island have this opportunity, or are we just going to narrow the focus of the boundaries? What are we doing with that? I think she has a good point there, where there are other, when we used to have that food service available, it was not limited to just a couple of properties. It actually was allowed for some of the Barrier Island hotels that maybe are just off A1A.
Sure.
I
what do we
think
do
the
with
idea
those?
was to have it on those hotels that are on A1A.
Okay.
Well, I think really everybody should be allowed to service the beach, and I think it should be open to everyone. So, but I also think we should just get it started. And I know just saying, let everyone serve food and alcohol and let everyone drink on the beach is probably too much for everyone to process. So why don't we just get it started? And then why don't we just add to it slowly? Let's just see how it works with the hotels, see how it works with spring break. And then a year from now, or let's form a committee, form a task force. I think all the businesses on the beach should be able to serve.
I think that makes
but
a lot of
let's just
sense.
I'm
see what it looks
fine
like
with that. I just want to make sure that city manager moving forward, we're cognizant of these issues and that we will be monitoring this very closely, because I want us to be able to have reports. I want us to be able to say, is this working? I want us to be able to understand, are there too many times where the police are called? Is, drunken behavior an issue? I just want us to be
We can
really.
always repeal the ordinance.
No, I understand. No, I
So,
know.
if I may, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
So definitely we can provide perhaps quarterly reports. There is a provision to temporarily suspend this program for those types of seasons. And we can certainly bring that awareness to the commission, to the public, when we expect to do that. If that's your wish, we can certainly do that.
Yeah. Well, the adults don't want to get kicked off the beach when the spring breakers come. I mean, but it's like 2 months that they're here. I mean, if I want to go to the Four Seasons with my family and it happens to be around Easter, but that's spring break, I shouldn't be kicked off,
So why don't we?
excluded from my chairs in front of the Four Seasons. So I wouldn't suspend it. This is just,
So we have two readings of this. So if whatever we pass today, we can have further discussion and we can see, what the community thinks between now and the second reading.
Yes.
But
And
honestly,
what
we've been talking about this ad nauseum for the last, 5-6 years. So if people say, well, we have to keep talking about it, that means they don't want to do it. So let's just experiment, see if it works. I think it will. I think we have very responsible hoteliers, and I think we have very responsible guests. I just feel that if we can move forward with this, let it sunset after a year, and give the city manager authority to make modifications you're done.
But there is no provision here that says it's sunsetting after a year.
Oh, no, but she's saying.
We can add it.
No, I understand, but it's not it's not what we're
She's
voting
adding
on.
to it.
Oh, you're changing for the second reading or the first, that would be for?
No,
I think we
So-
could change it for the,
If,
probably provide the second
so we
reading.
could do it, we could have an automatic repeal, or we could do where it automatically repeals if not repassed or re-legislated by the commission by a certain date, which would be a year later. So that, because what I'm trying to avoid is if this is a roaring success, if you have an automatic repeal, it's going to end and there's going to be a gap. So you may want to have just language in there that says it self-repeals unless it's passed again by the commission. So we just bring it back so there's no gap.
Okay. That works. And Mayor, I would just take exception with the fact that I think if people want to just keep talking about it, they just don't want it. I don't think that's the case here. I think that they just want to make it a little bit more inclusive or just a little bit better. That's all, but.
Okay. Keep in mind that Article F, penalties, license, suspension, or revocation, there is some latitude here that the city manager has if there are if there's a need to suspend the continuation of it. So it's already built into this ordinance.
Yes.
All right.
Do I
So-
have to be sitting in a chair or can I be sitting on that little wall?
You have to be in a chair. You have to be not just sitting there, but have paid for
Very
and
complicated.
have rented that chair.
Yes.
Enforcement will be difficult.
Sitting in it and paying for it.
With sunscreen.
With sunscreen.
All right. Would
Well,
someone
I'd like to do it till sunset, actually. Did we put that language in there? Sunrise to sunset.
Well, you do have to, I mean, that's something else that you need to consider if the time
Sunrise.
frames want to be
Sunrise to
changed.
sunset, not that anyone should be.
What are the hours now?
It's like stops at 5, right? When it's 5
So
o'clock.
why don't you
5
define?
o'clock
All right.
somewhere. We're shutting it
Commissioner,
down.
Sunrise
why
to
don't you-
sunset.
Part is
Why
the,
don't you tell us what ordinance you'd like to introduce and any modifications that you feel you'd like amended to this ordinance?
Well, I agree with
It-
the language that Alan said about self-repealing or whatever he's used. And then I do believe our hours, it should not end at 5 o'clock.
but the hours are going to have to probably coincide with, so the Boucher brothers, I presume, shut down at a particular time. So if after 5 o'clock, the Boucher brothers are not renting chairs, then that you're not able to rent a chair and be served alcohol.
When do they
So,
stop?
I'm not sure.
It depends on the season. In the summertime, they stop at 6, and in the winter, we are proposing that they stop at 7. We've revised the scope for the
There you go.
boucher- for the
The winter is
concessionaire.
7?
Summer, that's 6 to 8. Pretty good
Well, even
hours to sit on the beach.
Oh, I got it backwards.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. It
Okay.
gets darker earlier. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So the summer would stop at 7
7.
and winter at
So
6.
the chairs
Okay.
come up at 7. That's when, could we extend it just to sunset? Or is there a different reason why we need to stop it at 7?
I'm just going off what we've put in our concessionaire contract.
Okay.
okay.
Would the hotels prefer to have chairs in front of their hotel from sunrise to sunset so the guests can enjoy sitting outside? Or do you want them inside to eat? I forgot, we talked about that too. What do you think, Stephanie?
Good evening, Stephanie Toothaker. I represent the Boucher Brothers. I just want to be clear, there have been a lot of I'm here on behalf of the Boucher Brothers to support the hotelier's request. So we want to support the request that they are asking for the right to serve alcoholic beverages and food. We think that's really important for a 5-star beach. There were a couple of comments that were made. I just want to make it very clear. The Boucher Brothers are regulated by the city. So there's an actual site plan that was part of the RFP that was dictated by the city of Fort Lauderdale. It's not dictated by the Boucher Brothers. So the number of chairs that are on the beach, where they're placed, how many there are, what time they start, what time they close, that's all dictated by the city to the concessionaire. That's not decided by the Boucher Brothers. I want to make that point clear, but we are here to be supportive of the hotelier's request.
Right.
When do they start?
It just depends on what time of year it is. So
Okay.
it varies.
So maybe between now and the second reading, we could get input from the hotels. Would you prefer to have chairs for a longer period of time, sunrise to sunset? I mean, for me, that seems like it makes sense. Maybe I'm
I don't think it's that simple. I think it's something that was, when the original RFP was put on the street, that we responded to. We were successful in obtaining the concession, and it's a staffing issue on top of that. So it's not as easy as saying, okay, well, you should open up an hour earlier. We'd have to amend our staffing schedules and whatnot, but we're totally open to it, but it's not as easy as just saying,
It's not that easy.
do it an hour
So maybe
earlier.
that conversation is part of a year from now. Just work out those
And you
details.
know what, Commissioner? People are done by 5, 6 o'clock. You know, they're on the beach. They're like cooked. They're
Yeah, but if you can have, well, I actually prefer 5 to 8 when it's a little cooler, not so hot, you're not burning, you're sitting outside, you're eating a little, I don't know, I don't,
okay. All right. So
maybe we don't have to discuss that now. Discuss that in a year, even though.
so introduce the ordinance you'd like us to consider.
So are we adding that language now or on second reading?
It'll be between first and second read, with regards to the repeal?
Yeah.
We'll add that
Second.
in between readings.
Okay, so now we'll
you'll
just
have to, you're obviously passing it now as amended to the extent, we'll go ahead and add it, but that's how you want to amend it.
Okay, so we're just going to introduce it as amended, and the amendments will come upon second reading.
Okay.
So introducing as amended.
So what's the amendment?
The amendment's going to be, we're going to put in a clause that within 365 days, if the city commission does not repass it, then it'll self-repeal.
Okay, fine.
So, and then I do think it would be great if you all would have some kind of working committee that could really, look at these other issues.
Okay, I think it's a
Well,
good
I would
idea.
actually hope that the neighborhood association would stay active and monitor this and get feedback and figure out how it's going, and then coordinate your clients also. And I just think that people just need to dialogue. That's all. They need to continue dialogue.
Okay, so the ordinance has been introduced as amended. No one else has signed up to speak. Do I close public hearing?
No, there's no public hearing.
Okay. Please call the roll.
An ordinance of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, amending Chapter 8, Article 3 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, titled Public Beaches by repealing in its entirety Section 8-55.4, titled Food and Non-Alcoholic Beverage Service, and creating a new code, Section 8-55.4, titled Sale, Service, and Consumption of Food and Alcoholic Beverages to allow hotel owners and operators to sell, serve, and deliver food and alcoholic beverages on the public beach for consumption by hotel guests or any person renting a beach chair from a city-approved beach concessionaire, and amending Section 8-85 titled Alcoholic Beverages Prohibited to allow an exception, providing for definitions, providing for regulations and penalties, providing for severability, providing for conflicts and repeal, providing for correction of scrivener's errors, and providing for an effective date. Commissioner Moritas?
Yes.
Commissioner Glassman?
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis?
Yes. And the ordinance is approved on first reading. OSR 1, second reading, quasi-judicial ordinance, OFR 2, first reading, ordinance repealing Article 9, prohibition of conversion therapy on minors of Chapter 29, Human Rights of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida Code of Ordinances. One person has signed up to speak, Mr. Labrie, but I just want to point out that I question why we had to do this. And because I felt we should just leave it on the books and just not enforce it. But thank you, folks. But we're told by our city attorney that if anybody chooses to sue the city under this ordinance, that we would be subject to damages and attorney's fees. And so I'm really concerned about that. But is there any further? Why don't we let Mr. Labrie speak? Are you still here?
Yes, he's over there.
Where's, oh, back there, okay.
Hello again. Mayor Trentalis, Commissioners Moritas and Glassman. My name is James Labrie, and I've been a resident of Poinsettia Heights neighborhood in Fort Lauderdale for 20 years. I'm the Vice President of the Poinsettia Heights Civic Association and a member of the Fort Lauderdale Infrastructure Task Force Advisory Committee. I am also a member of the Equality Florida Broward Steering Committee, Equality Florida being the largest statewide advocacy organization for LGBTQ community. I'm speaking here tonight for myself and not as a representative of any of the aforementioned organizations or committee assignments. I understand why this item is on the agenda tonight. I understand what the U.S. 11th Circuit Court has mandated. I understand what the city is doing. I understand it, and I don't like it. Let's be clear about one thing. Conversion therapy is not therapy. Conversion therapy is not evidence-based medicine. Conversion therapy is pseudoscience. Conversion therapy is a professionally discredited treatment. Conversion therapy is psychological abuse. It's well documented that trauma at home or at school, be it physical or mental, is a root cause of youth suicide. And LGBTQ youth are more than 4 times as likely to commit suicide than their peers. Conversion therapy does nothing to address this issue. In fact, it's part of the problem, not the resolution. This court-ordered mandate, under the guise of the right to freedom of speech, will undoubtedly lead to more self-destructive behavior and potentially more deaths by suicide. Florida law defines child abuse as a willful or threatened act resulting in physical, mental, or sexual injury or harm, causing or likely to cause impairment of physical, mental, or emotional health. A parent may say that conversion therapy is okay. That is their right to free speech. But parents in Florida do not have the right to abuse their children. If the Fort Lauderdale City Commission moves to repeal Article 9 following the decision of the court, I ask that you, the elected officials, also move to find other ways to codify and protect the LGBTQ youth of this city who will be put in harm's way because of this misguided court ruling. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this item? All right, so Jim, let me ask you something, if you can come back to the podium. So the Court of Appeals, the U.S. Court of Appeals has found this ordinance to be unconstitutional.
Right.
The city attorney has indicated to us that it could subject the city to significant financial risk if we keep it on the books.
Mm-hmm.
What would you recommend that we do?
Well, I think you have to do what your city attorney is advising you to do. I don't like it, but you have to do it.
Okay.
I agree with that.
Okay. Thank you.
But let's try to do something that's going to protect the LGBTQ children.
We're all ears. If we come up with solutions, we're here for you.
Well, Mayor.
Well, I'm asking you to look for solutions too. It
Oh, we
shouldn't
are
just be
too.
me.
Trust me. This was one effort that we tried, so
All
we're going
right.
to try again.
What I would suggest, though, James, and I don't know if you're aware of what the county did. The county repealed it too, based on the advice of their attorney and that part of the ordinance. But they also, at the same time, passed a very strongly worded resolution opposing the practice of conversion therapy with a lot of backup and a lot of evidence and a lot of research. And what I would ask the commission to
There
do.
you have it, Murph.
What I would ask the commission to do is to follow the county program where they passed the repeal of their ordinance, but they also at the same time passed the resolution on conversion therapy and opposing that. So I have forwarded to our city attorney all of the backup from the county. I believe they did this at the end of August, August 25th. So he has all that. I've also had a discussion with Equality Florida about looking at what the county did to see if they can add to it, make it stronger, or just edit it in any way they felt necessary. And that's what I would ask the commission to direct the city attorney to do, to come back on second reading with the resolution so that when we pass this repealing of that prohibition of conversion therapy, we at the same time pass the resolution opposing the practice of conversion therapy.
So are you introducing the ordinance, repealing Article 9, and then requesting the city attorney to come back on second reading, amending or appending the ordinance with the type of resolution that you described?
No, I don't think it would be amending or appending. I think it would be just clear.
Separate resolution.
It's just a separate resolution. A clean cut.
Separate resolution?
Yeah, the repeal of the prohibition would just be exactly that. And then nothing else to amend or append, but then we pass a resolution, or we consider a resolution opposing the practice of conversion therapy based on the model of the county, basically following what the county did. They passed both things at the same time.
So I would be more comfortable if we deferred this till we had that resolution and we can pass it at the same time.
Well, we have to do a second reading on this.
Yeah, I guess, but,
And Mayor, the thought was, in speaking with the commissioner, that the impact would be greater upon final repeal. If you would do it at the first reading, you'd have a passage of the resolution, but then you'd have to have another meeting afterwards with the repeal all by itself. And that was the thinking behind having the resolution on second reading versus first reading.
whatever you decide, I can't introduce the ordinance, so.
And again, that was just,
Yeah,
I just
I
need
know.
direction from the
It
commission.
just turns my stomach that we're doing this at all, but if you're telling us that we're putting the city at risk financially by keeping it on the books, then I guess we have no choice. So would you like to introduce the resolution, the ordinance?
I will introduce I will introduce, this is a resolution, isn't it? No, this is
Ordinance.
an
Ordinance, first reading.
It's an
of the
ordinance repeal.
Yep.
Yes, I would, yes, I will introduce it, not happily, but I will introduce it because I understand why we have to do it. And at the same time, now, do we have to have, give you direction to prepare a resolution?
Based on what's left on the dais, I just need two people to say that's okay.
Well,
Okay.
I think you have two.
Okay,
Okay, so yes, I will introduce it.
okay. Please call the roll.
An ordinance of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, repealing Article 9, Prohibition of Conversion Therapy on Minors of Chapter 29, Human Rights of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida Code of Ordinances, providing for severability, providing for conflicts and repeal, providing for correction of scrivener's errors, and providing for an effective date. Commissioner Moritas?
Yes.
Commissioner Glassman?
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis?
Yes, and the ordinance is approved on first reading. OSR 1, second reading, quasi-judicial ordinance rezoning from residential multifamily mid-rise, medium-high density RMM 25 district to Northwest Regional Activity Center mixed-use East Northwest RAC MUE district. This is 312 Northwest 7th Street LLC. Anyone wishing to speak must be sworn in, and the commission will announce any site visits, communications, or expert opinions received and make them a part of the record. Commissioner Moritas, do you have any additional disclosures to make?
No. No.
None. I have no additional disclosures. Commissioner Glassman?
No, nothing new.
Okay. Stephanie Toothaker is signed up to speak only for questions. Anyone have any questions? If none, would someone like to introduce the ordinance?
Introduced.
An ordinance amending Section 47-1.6.b of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Unified Land Development Regulations through the revision of the official zoning map of the City of Fort Lauderdale and Schedule A revised compilation attached thereto and by reference made a part thereof so as to rezone from residential multifamily mid-rise medium-high density district to Northwest Regional Activity Mixed-Use East District lots 1 through 16 and lots 34, 35, 36, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, and 48, Block 322 Progresso according to the plat thereof as recorded in Plat Book 2, page 18 of the Public Records of Dade County, Florida, located west of Northwest 3rd Avenue, north of Sistrunk Boulevard, east of Northwest 4th Avenue, and south of Northwest 7th Street, all said lands being in the City of Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, Florida. Commissioner Moritas?
Yes.
Commissioner Glassman?
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis?
Yes, and that ordinance is now approved on second reading. Congratulations. Any further business of the commission?
I do. Do we have a walk-on resolution?
What is that?
No, that didn't happen?
No, we
No.
decided we needed to have more discussion among staff and wait for the next commission. City Hall, she's talking about the City Hall walk.
Sorry, I had that. Yes, I was just thinking, we were talking about the two charter officers, that I believe just the city manager, is that the only charter officer that we require to live in the City of Fort Lauderdale?
Pursuant to the charter, that is a requirement that's in the charter that he reside, so it is the only, the other previous auditor, for example, that was by contract, and I believe the former city attorney was by contract as well. But the requirement that the city manager live in this city is in the charter.
It's in the charter. I guess I was just thinking that it may be something we want to consider, or maybe the next commission, that we give the city manager a housing allowance. Since he has to live in the city of Fort Lauderdale, our city is a lot more expensive to live in. He did relocate from a different city. You know, when we were in the Navy, we lived in a different area. The Navy just gives you different housing allowances based on the housing index of each area. I don't know, we don't have to obviously decide it tonight, but I do think it's something that you all should consider as you move forward, maybe when you're going to give Greg his next increase, or maybe we discussed it earlier. Just a thought I had.
Something to consider. I don't know, I mean, it's an interesting point, because I thought about it myself. But I don't know I don't have an answer right now. I don't know.
Yeah, you know, commissioners are required to live in the district that they,
Right, but we live in the district first and then we run. Greg, like I said, we hire people from outside of our city and we bring them in. I just think it's also something attractive to make as part of a package. He's the only person that's required to live in the city, and the city's a lot more expensive. So just
something to ponder.
Something to ponder. I've been just.
Okay.
When you're having a drink on a chaise lounge on the beach.
Might be sitting on the seawall.
Any further business of the commission? You have nothing?
What's that wall called?
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.